70s, and yes, we are talking about that dangerous surf continuing to escalate. We work our way westbound toward Destin, Florida, and notice the dangerous wave heights, those continuing to come up as well. And again, we're talking about landfall here over the course of the next few hours, but beyond that, this will be a mighty force to reckon with as it makes its move throughout Georgia as a hurricane later on this evening, right into early tonight, not really going down to a tropical storm really until we venture into tomorrow morning. That means we're going to be talking about widespread tree damage. Here's a closer inspection, and notice roughly around 8 o'clock making its transition into Georgia still, Category 2 hurricane weakening thereafter. The big concern that we do have here over the next several hours, of course, would be the storm surge, that water level rise, that inundation. Already some, again, reports around Apalachicola of water level rise, the water levels themselves upwards of 5 to 6 feet, and those will continue to go up. So we talk about the impacts around Pensacola and Panama City. Again, the most of those are going to be off to the east of Pensacola here. Apalachicola, winds here could exceed 120 to even 150 miles per hour. And again, we're going to be talking about some extremely heavy rainfall amounts as well. Coastal Carolina impacts, this is going to be a concern as we go down the road as well, because as you know, Florence did quite a bit of disruption and damage. And again, we're talking about weakened rooting systems and also very saturated soils. Our very own Chief Meteorologist Bernie Reno sat down with Kenneth Graham, the director of the Hurricane Center, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, the combination is incredibly dangerous if you think about it. So we're looking at, the potential 6 to 10 inches of rain. They're really close to the Florida Panhandle into portions of Georgia, but an area of 4 to potentially 6 inches of rain stretches through Georgia into the Carolinas. So we're predicting, we're still going to have hurricane force winds in central Georgia, force winds into the Carolinas. So if you combine the two and get that kind of rain and start saturating the soil, you can have power outages. Not just a coastal thing here, but power outages, trees down well inland into Georgia and also the Carolinas.
So again, beyond landfall, those flash flood watches extend well north and east all the way to the Tar Heel State, areas that were, again, inundated with feet of rain. We're going to be talking about that potential of 4 to 8 inches over a widespread swath, and notice even heavier amounts here back toward the I-10. And this would cause flash flooding and the potential for river flooding. Highest wind gusts just east of the circulation center, near and just south and east of Panama City, where they could be gusting to 150. But notice the inland wind gusts of 60 to 80 miles per hour, and that means power outages already over 9,000 over the Sunshine State. That number will continue to escalate.
Look, cleaning the outside of your windows is a real chore. And who wants to climb a dangerous ladder just to get to the second floor? Not anymore.
Hi, I'm John Florell, the Fuller Brush Man. And this is Full Crystal from the Fuller Brush Company. The fastest, easiest way to clean all of your windows in minutes, not days. Just add the cleaning crystals, attach it to any garden hose, and away you go. The secret is in the Fuller cleaning crystals that dissolve dust, dirt, pollen, and grime in no time. And here's the best part. You don't have to remove your screens because Full Crystal cleans them too. Watch what I'm gonna do. This screen may look clean, but look how Full Crystal blasts away the dust, pollen, dirt, and grime while it cleans your window at the same time. And that'll save you a ton of time.
Look, even with the ladder, you couldn't reach that window. But with the Full Crystal Power Sprayer, you can clean windows up to 27 feet high. Simply aim, spray, and walk away, leaving your windows spot-free, streak-free, and with both feet securely on the ground.
For a clean so clear, your windows will virtually disappear.
Plus, it's completely safe for all of your plants, lawns, shrubs, and flowers. And watch this. Full Crystal gives you the power to blast away carbon debris from shutter.
Coast of the Florida Panhandle between St. Vincent Island and Panama City. And John Scott, it is moving fast.
It was expected to come ashore as a Category 2 storm. Instead, it exploded in ferocity to a Category 4. It is going to cause a huge amount of damage. Hearts go out to those folks there.
That's it for us. Special coverage of Hurricane Michael continues here on the Fox News Channel with Shepard Smith.
Hurricane
Hurricane Michael, it's on the way, and it's expected to be historic. I'm Shepard Smith on the Fox News deck. Our afternoon programming, including Outnumbered, will not be seen today. Hurricane Michael is a major Category 4 storm set to make landfall somewhere around Panama City Beach, Florida. It's expected to be the most powerful storm ever to hit the region, and it's but an hour or two away. Let's get a live update from the National Hurricane Center in Miami.
Back to the National Hurricane Center. This is Ken Graham right here in our operations area. On our official clock, it is noon Eastern, 11 o'clock Central. We have the latest information on Hurricane Michael, and a couple things to make
I've got it
note
on
here.
Fox News.
The latest information, we have winds still at
now.
150 miles an hour. Pressure has dropped. We have the hurricane hunters, both from NOAA and the Air Force, in the system, getting us the latest information. So we're constantly being updated with information. We're now 35 miles southwest of Mexico Beach, 40 miles south of Panama City, so getting closer and closer to the shore. I did want to mention as well, we are sitting looking at Apalachicola Airport getting winds 45 miles an hour sustained gusting to hurricane force. So the water's already coming up as well. The National Ocean Service has a water level station there at Apalachicola already reporting 5.5 feet of inundation. So it is getting closer. We're already seeing the impacts. And we can see the focus here. Most people focus on the eye, so we are looking at that movement that we've been forecasting turning more to the east has happened. So landfall somewhere early this afternoon around Mexico Beach. But let's be careful, because we look at the hurricane force winds extending 45 miles away from that center, so it's going to be a larger swath than just that center. So we have to look at the system much bigger, and some of these rain bands are producing hurricane force wind gusts, and that's where you're going to see the dangers of the wind damage, but also the tornadoes that we can see in some of these areas. So we're getting closer and closer to land, and again, have to focus on the big picture here, because you can see rainfall as far down as Tampa being impacted by this system already. So let's look at the forecast with time. Again, tropical storm force winds 175 miles away from the center, so a very large system, and that's what we need to think about. Not just the point, not just the cone, but really looking at this as a swath of winds and swath of impacts. So this hurricane making a landfall, major damage, catastrophic damage. All the winds, you'll see trees down, you see power outages for literally weeks in this area. You see damage to buildings, roofs off, and some buildings could be destroyed altogether. Remaining a hurricane with time, so not just along the coast. For anybody watching inland on the Alabama-Georgia line, still a hurricane moving into Georgia, even a tropical storm still getting into the Carolinas. So if you take that rain and you take that wind, you're going to have trees down, you're going to have power outages in Florida, Georgia, and maybe even getting into the Carolinas. Rainfall is always an issue, and that's part of the reason that we're going to see, the rain 6 to 10 inches, and you're going to part of the reason you're going to see some of these trees down. You're going to saturate the soil, so you're going to have the actual damage from the winds right there on the coast. But with time, you put 4 to 6 inches of rain saturating the soil, and you get tropical storm force wind gusts. You can see some tree damage all along this entire path. But right in here, 6 to 10 inches of rain, just catastrophic, and the storm surge. We've been talking about the storm surge. Half of fatalities in these tropical systems is indeed the storm surge. And these values are just staggering, life-threatening storm surge, and we're already seeing 5.5 feet, and we got a long way to go. 9 to 14 feet possible in these areas from Tyndall Air Force Base along the coast to the Osceola River. I mean, that's just a staggering amount. That is above ground, and you look at that, and the waves on top of that could add another couple feet. 6 to 9 feet in areas towards Cedar Key, even down to Tampa could see 2 to 4 feet of inundation. I do want to make note that it's not just on the coast. You talk about these barrier islands will get water and then forcing northward. The red here is above 9 foot of storm surge. Look how far some of that surge reaches inland. So we got to be aware. Even if you think you're inland, you still could be in danger. This has been Ken Graham here at the National Hurricane Center.
And I'm Shepard Smith in New York with continuing Fox News coverage of this storm. I'm going to give you details of what we're seeing. Let's go over to the big wall, and I'll show you how this hurricane has developed. These pictures go back. This is a satellite loop. And watch this. This is the latest image here. But watch when this reloads. See here, the eye wall's not very well formed. And in the last 8 to 10 hours, that's really changed. You can watch that eye wall come together as a very significant, almost completely round eye wall. It stretches 15 miles across. So remember, the highest winds, when they talk about maximum sustained winds, 145 miles an hour. That's an extremely powerful and catastrophic wind level. 145-mile-an-hour winds are all around the outside of that eye wall, and the eye wall is 15 miles across. So everything the eye wall goes across will, in theory, experience winds maximum sustained winds at 145 miles an hour with wind gusts to 165 miles an hour. What does that do? Winds at that level, I've lived through them, and there are statistics for the National Hurricane Center to back this up. Winds at that level pick up rocks and boulders and limbs and send them as projectiles through the air, and that's what causes so much damage and destruction. Those rocks and trees break windows, break into houses, and the sustained pounding is one of the most serious problems. So where is this going exactly? You heard the National Hurricane Center talk about, we're talking about a large area.
Thank you,
that'll be affected.
Got a fan turned on the
coast itself, talking about an area from about Tampa all the way up over to Pensacola. You can see it's raining in Pensacola. The rains are coming in Tampa. But I want to zoom in and show you what this storm has been doing. This is ground-based radar. Here's Panama City, Florida. Apalachicola, this is the place where they have the oyster beds that are so famous. Panama City, the Miracle Mile Resort. In Panama City, about 180,000 year-round residents. I think that's right, 180,000 or so. In the county itself, Bay County, 185,000, and about 36,000 live in Panama City itself. I want to show you what this eye wall has been doing. I'm going to zoom all the way in. So this is ground-based radar that's coming to us from here. And you can see this very well-defined eye wall. The center of circulation is here, everything clear in the middle, and the worst of the winds around the outside. Here's the worst of the rain right now just to the north. So where's this headed? Here's Panama City itself. This is the very tightly knit, high-density area for this community. Remember, these are small towns all along here. But it looks like from the last turns, you heard the National Hurricane Center say,
Allison,
rather
yes,
than
it is
moving
scary.
due north, which would get Panama City in a really bad way, the eye of this storm, at least, appears to be moving toward Mexico Beach. This is Mexico Beach. Here's Panama City, Tyndall Air Force Base, I'll talk about that in just a minute, and Mexico Beach. So it looks to Hurricane Center like the eye of this storm is going to make a trek just like this, somewhere between Tyndall Air Force Base and Mexico Beach. That is not to say anyone else is out of danger, because remember, the hurricane force winds, that means winds above 76 miles an hour, are extending 45 miles from the center. And then tropical storm force winds extend 175 miles from the center. So this entire region from Gulf Breeze into Destin, South Walton County, Panama City
When they
Beach,
go to a commercial,
down
I'll
to
put it
Port
back
St.
on the
Joe,
Weather Channel.
Apalachicola, around the Big Bend, and certainly once you go inland to Tallahassee. Here's Tallahassee. The storm is expected to move in this direction. So this will be a Tallahassee storm without any question. The mayor of Tallahassee will be on with us in just a little while. The predictions from the local authorities there is that people, even in the Tallahassee area, could be without power for weeks on end. This coast is in extreme danger. Exactly where it comes ashore is going to make a significant difference because of where the population centers are. I want to zoom in here. Actually, let's turn that off and clear that, and zoom in here to show you exactly where we're talking about. Here's Panama City and Panama City Beach. Ooh, hate it when it does that. Note here the topography of this land. If the storm is coming in here, which they now believe, here's Panama City. If the storm is coming in here into this area, then they get the backside. Remember, the storms circulate in this way, so the water would be coming out. That could drain all of these areas here, St. Andrews Bay and Grand Lagoon and all the rest around Panama City. So if they think the storm is going to come ashore here, the worst of it will be to the right. That's not to say these communities aren't in some sort of jeopardy. I want to switch to the satellite version here. This is Rosemary Beach and Seaside, South Walton County. The locals call this area 30A. It's a largely second home community. People from Atlanta and Nashville and points north and Michigan and Ohio have settled here in second homes and in some cases retirement areas. These used to be very moderately priced, small town sea communities with houses on stilts in a very quiet sort of beach community area. That's all changed from Seaside and Grayton Beach down to Seacrest and Rosemary Beach, Sunnyside, Laguna Beach. All of this 30A area is now heavily populated, lots of high density right along the beach. It's an upper, I would say, an upper scale area. And then down here is Port St. Joe. The rest of this is largely rural. Bluntstown up here, Fountain. This is an area where I worked and lived for years. My mom lived here for 32 years. There's a lot of poverty in this area. The great concern moving into this storm from the locals there in Bay County, Florida and beyond was that so many people had made a decision not to evacuate. Last big storm, probably Opal, way back in 1995 it was, and it hit way over here to the east of Pensacola, but they got a lot of really bad weather because of it when it hit 23 years ago. They haven't seen anything like this ever on this coast. If it moves into the east of Panama City Beach in the next couple of hours, which they now seem to think it will, all of this will have a lot of trouble. Mexico Beach, these small communities. But a bigger problem may end up being inland. Inland is the area where there's so much poverty and so little help for people. And then you move over to the state capital of Tallahassee. Tallahassee has 181,000 people. Leon County around it is a total of about 290,000 people. It's obviously the center of government in Florida with a huge election coming up. They're expecting this storm to move in this sort of a direction. When it comes ashore, it'll expected to come ashore right about to the east of Panama City. So here's the storm right now. It's expected to move in this direction, moving just like this and in the general direction of Tallahassee. The news is better for Fort Walton Beach and Destin, though they will get very strong winds and very high waves. It's going to be a serious event there. Panama City Beach could very well be in hurricane force winds, and everything to the east of it, all the way down the Big Bend of Florida. This entire region from Tampa all the way up to Pensacola is going to have a serious and historic day today. Griff Jenkins is in Alligator Point, Florida. That's a beach community located on a narrow peninsula about an hour's drive from Tallahassee. And the weather where he is so bad. Well, let's see if we can hear from Griff. The weather's deteriorating.
Chef, can you hear me? I am in Alligator Point. It is deteriorating here. We just want to give you a look before we lose Tom from an iPhone. It is really whipping and that storm surges and that.
I can barely hear him. My volume's up.
We're really going to be hitting this way. Just the water coming up.
That's them. That's not myself.
Well, it's on and off. We'll try to get there. But our reporter Nicole Ensalada from WSVN 7 in South Florida is actually in Panama City Beach now. Let's listen to Nicole.
To give you an idea of just how Panama City Beach is very. See, Diana, back to you guys.
All right, Nicole, thank you. And video, meantime, from all over the storm zone coming into the Newsplex. 7's Omar Lewis continues. Our team's having coverage with some of those images. Omar?
Yeah, this afternoon we are getting video into the Newsplex showing those conditions worsening. We're getting reports of downed trees, down power lines in some areas. Let's take you to some video from Shell Point Beach this afternoon showing those streets starting to flood there, the wind picking up. We are hearing that nearby in the town of Mexico Beach, Florida, they have already lost power. 1,200 people there now without power. Those winds gusting, as you saw in Nicole Ensalada's live shot. We are also hearing that, of course, travel in this area greatly impacted by all of this. Several airlines already canceling flights to many of these areas. We are talking about airlines like United Airlines, Delta Airlines, as well as Allegiant Airlines, affecting travel across this entire region. So you are looking at video again from Shell Point Beach. That's in the Panhandle. They are starting to get those first impacts from this storm. You see the flooding right now. We're also, we can tell you that there are down power lines in certain areas also. We are following this story, of course, for you all afternoon. And as soon as any more video comes into the Newsplex, we will be sure to bring that to you.
And we can go live now to the zone. That's WSBN 7. I've been talking to you about Apalachicola. Again, here's Panama City Beach. And here's this oyster area, community of about 2,200 people. Near what used to be a big paper processing plant. Apalachicola, famous in the region, and our Phil Keating is there. Phil, it looks like Appalachia's going to have an awful day.
Absolutely. This is the worst it's been all morning, and it's only projected to get worse than this over the next 3-4 hours. That's Water Street. That's where I was doing my live shots yesterday. As you can see, it's 3 to 4 feet underwater right now. And if you pan off to the right, that's a parking lot of our hotel. That's also practically thigh deep. And all of the vehicles have been moved to the highest point in that parking lot. But Franklin County on the southern tip of the Big Bend of Florida is so low-lying. There's really most of the county's under 15-foot elevation, so the whole county's under a mandatory evacuation. And clearly, we saw plenty of people yesterday. A lot of people did evacuate, but by far not everybody. But supposed to get possibly up to 9 to 13-foot storm surge. And take a look at what's over here. This is the Apalachicola River. You can see the waves going from right to left. That's from the Gulf inland, upstream. This river needs to be flowing out, but the surge and the winds are pushing it all back up. And what that forecasts is that upland, it's going to be flooding there because that water has got to go somewhere. These are some strong winds coming through. The hotel lost power about 45 minutes ago, so I guess that's the beginning of that. Cell service still working, but this is certainly the most extreme wind and rain that we've had here today. It's a little too dangerous to be walking around in this. There's all kinds of debris floating around that have blown off these storage buildings and a shrimp processing building. It's dangerous out here for sure. That is why this whole county is under a shelter-in mandatory warning. Everyone stay inside. That's the order, because law enforcement, first responders will not come to you. It's too dangerous for everybody. There's really only one road in and out for Apalachicola. It's Highway 98. You can take it northwest up to Panama City, or you can take it east towards Tallahassee. The bridge is closed on the east and the roadway is closed on the west until further notice, until long after Hurricane Michael blows through here, and then you get your emergency responders to assess the damage. What's anticipated is massive power outages, as well as a lot of fallen trees. This part of Florida doesn't really have all that many palm trees. It's more pine trees, and those could be blocking roadways and power lines down. It could be really difficult for anybody to get in or out of here for a while, Shep.
Phil, stay right there. I want to show our viewers where we are on all of this. See, this is where the storm
Thank you guys
is
for
right
watching.
now.
You guys are
This is
so
the
awesome.
hurricane.
I'm going
It's
to leave it
moving,
run.
and generally
I'll be right
speaking,
back.
I should clear that because that's not exactly right. Here's where the storm is right now. It's moving generally, this is it, it's moving generally toward Mexico Beach. And then here's Apalachicola, where Phil is. Phil, they're expecting up to 13-foot storm surge there above high tide, which means a 2-story building covered. Phil, can you hear me?
I hear you, Shep. Sorry.
A 13-foot storm surge there is a world changer for you folks.
Oh, absolutely. For the whole town. Population.
I've got to put the charger on this phone. Sorry, guys. Hang on.
Alone, about 16,000 in the whole county. And the sheriff, we were speaking to him last night.
There we go.
They fully expect, if this is going to be that 6 to 12 inches of rain and the 9 to 13-foot storm surge. I mean, you see the stop signs. It's already halfway up the stop signs, and we still have a few hours of intensity to go. So it really does portend to be the historic hurricane that FEMA, as well as the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, were warning the entire state all morning long. Everybody who did not evacuate, who should have, is absolutely advised, do not even go out in this. And they closed all the bridges along the coastline already in the Panhandle of Big Bend. Now, palm fronds are flying through the air. I just saw one go by. Curfew is in effect as of today. So starting at sunset to sunrise, Franklin County will be under a mandatory curfew, and we certainly expect many more counties in the Florida Panhandle are going to go into curfew mode as well, simply to get people off the streets, let the first responders and law enforcement get out there and see the damage. But there's 1,000 National Guardsmen and women already activated. They're search and rescue. That's what their mission is going to be. They've got boats, they've got ATVs. 3,500 Florida Highway Patrolmen are also working 12-hour shifts, each of them. And Florida Department of Transportation has a lot of utility trucks pre-staged out of Pensacola and Orlando ready to get the power back on. That is the #1 priority, according to Governor Scott this morning. And certainly, everyone is advised in Florida to always have a 3-day supply of food and water. That is because it's always a very real possibility that you will lose power for 3 days. Down in Miami last year, which was impacted by Hurricane Irma, but it was only Category 1 effect in Miami, neighborhoods still lost power for a full week. And here we're talking about a really mean Category 4, Chef.
I want to get the latest coordinates. WSVN 7's meteorologist up and just starting. Let's listen.
On the Florida Panhandle as we speak, it's a very strong Category 4 hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds. That's the latest update as of 12 o'clock. And it is finally making that north-northeastward turn at a slightly faster pace, 14 miles per hour. Pressure has been dropping, a sign of a strengthening system, and it's located 35 miles southwest of Mexico Beach, Florida. Now, in a satellite picture, the eye is extremely distinct, and you could see the ring. That's the eye wall where you're finding the most destructive winds. So once the center pushes onshore, potentially catastrophic wind damage, likely, highly likely, especially anywhere between Apalachicola into Panama City. And it is definitely very close to making landfall. All of the same steering features are present to carry it into the Florida Panhandle, high pressure to the east, front around the nation's midsection. But it seems like this one, even as it interacts with land, will stay a hurricane for a longer period of time, possibly a Category 2 system moving into sections of Georgia, and then eventually a tropical storm around the middle Atlantic states. And we have new advisories that have been updated for portions of South and North Carolina. Now, here's a close-up view of the track. It is likely to make landfall between Panama City and Mexico Beach, and that will happen in the next hour, hour and a half or so. And then once it interacts with land, yes, we're expecting it to gradually weaken, but by 8 o'clock tonight, still a Cat 2 system, so a large area will still be experiencing strong hurricane force winds, consistent heavy rains, and then storm surge continuing to remain an issue. Now, all of these locations under a hurricane warning, tropical storm warning from Cedar Key to Crystal River, and then into Sarasota, including Tampa Bay. There's a tropical storm watch, but now the tropical storm warning has been extended into Duck, North Carolina. The local storm tracking radar picking up that the center is definitely getting very close to making a landfall. So the outer eye wall is definitely going to be pushing onshore before the center does cross through. So yes, we're keeping our friends in the Panhandle of Florida in our prayers.
And we all are. That's the meteorology team down at WSVN 7 in South Florida. I want to show you the eye of this storm again, zooming in. This eye is 15 miles wide, right? It's 15 miles wide. It's moving at 14 miles an hour. So wherever this eye comes ashore, and it's starting to look more and more like right around Tyndall Air Force Base, for a solid hour in the center, they'll have clear skies, almost no winds, after these incredible 145 mile an hour, 150 mile an hour winds with 165, 170 mile an hour gusts have come through. So in the beginning, these winds going in this direction and slamming into the Panhandle there, that'll do an enormous amount of damage. And then people will be able to go outside and look. No one should do that, because at some point the backside of this storm will come. And instead of winds moving in this direction, the winds will be moving in this direction. So they'll be coming out of this side. And everything that was blown over that way is then pushed back in the other direction. That can go on for an hour around Tyndall Air Force Base. Tyndall Air Force Base is the home of the F-22 Raptors. 325th Fighter Wing is a fighter wing is there. The 44th Fighter Group, the 95th Fighter Squadron is there. This thing opened back in 1941 as a gunnery range, and right now 2,700 people live there. 81% of everyone who lives there has a kid. Adults who live there have a kid under the age of 18. So a lot of children there. It covers about 15 square miles. So if this continues somewhere along Mexico Beach and Tyndall Air Force Base, here's Mexico Beach, here's Tyndall Air Force Base, Tyndall Parkway, here's Port St. Joe, and down here Apalachicola, all of this in for a very long day. And then keep in mind, as the meteorology team from WSVN was saying, as it continues up, Tallahassee, we'll get extraordinary rain and potential for hurricane force winds. Same up into Bainbridge, Georgia. As you move up into Thomasville, Tallahassee and Thomasville share a highway, and they're sort of intertwined in a number of different ways. All of that area there. And Apalachicola, we were mentioning the difficulties with escaping from Mexico Beach all the way down to Apalachicola. In just a minute, it'll let me zoom in, and I'll be able to show you exactly how that works. It's almost impossible to get out of here easily. You can see this is State Route 65 that takes you all the way up, and you have to get all the way here to
Guys,
get up
I would really
to get to
appreciate a
Interstate
thumbs up
10.
if this is what you want to
Interstate
see.
10 that crosses and goes all the way over to New Orleans and all the way to the West Coast. There are no interstates in this area, so evacuations are very difficult, and they're expecting so much of this area to be flooding. Let's go to Panama City Beach now. Rick Leventhal
Thank you.
is live
I
there.
appreciate
Rick, conditions deteriorating.
Yeah, by the minute, as we expected, Shepard. Just want to show you a couple of things from this vantage point alongside Highway 98, just to give you an idea. The pine trees up there blowing in some pretty heavy gusts, and we do expect some of those to start snapping. You see a big billboard there. There are a bunch of those around us, but more of a concern than the billboards are all these power lines. And you can see some of the lines now just bouncing around in the wind, and we have seen some pretty significant gusts. This is giving us some concern right here. You know, this is the strongest hurricane they're saying they ever hit this stretch of Panhandle, and we don't know if signs like that are going to survive. Buildings are going to survive. This is 98. The Gulf is about 2 miles that way, and you can see the highway is virtually deserted. One of the biggest concerns for Bay County officials was that people were not heeding the evacuation order, at least not as many people as they wanted. About 120,000 people that they said were in the low-lying area that should get out, and they said about only half of them, about 60,000, had heeded that warning and were actually leaving the low-lying areas. That includes areas prone to flooding and also mobile home parks. You see, these street lights are on now, Jeff. They weren't a short time ago, so they're flickering on and off, and the power in our hotel also flickering on and off. Hardly any traffic. We saw a couple vehicles. That's about it, and that's a good thing because it's getting really hairy out here now.
Welcome
and,
all.
Officials have told people if you didn't evacuate,
I will be doing
to stay
live
in place,
feed all
shelter in
day.
place, and don't go out until after the storm passes.
Rick, what side of the bridge are you on? Are you in town or you're on Panama City Beach?
Yeah, we're in Panama City, but we're about 2 miles from the Gulf, from the actual beach itself. So it's just down the road about 2 miles that way. One of the many bridges that you need to take to get, this is 98.
Okay, got it.
It's US 98. So if you look around this way, I don't know if you can do it, but you can see east to Panama City is that way. There's a bridge over there, but they shut the bridges down once the winds get to 40 or 50 miles an hour. We're definitely at that point now. A lot of the bridges around here have been closed. We're starting to see some debris fly around too, so we want to not put ourselves in harm's way here, Jeff. But you know, the situation progressively getting worse. The good news is nobody's out here. The bad news is that they're in for it. It's going to be bad. It's going to get worse.
It clearly is. Here's where he is. This is Highway 98. It goes all along the beach route from Sunnyside, Laguna Beach, down into Panama City. And this is the bridge that takes you into Panama City proper. So Rick is like here, and this is inland. I want to go to Jeff Flock. He's on Panama City Beach as well. Jeff, where are you, and what's it look like?
Holy
yeah,
cow.
on the Front Beach Road, this is the road that runs the beach, Jeff, and as perhaps you can see, we're getting it pretty good here right now. You were saying earlier about, you know, this is a town that had a tremendous building boom of these large buildings, and this has really encouraged a lot of people to say, you know what, these things are built for these hurricanes. We can weather it out, not a problem. So there are a lot of people, I can report, are still holed up in these buildings. I think some of them are having some second thoughts right now as we get, you know, the conditions of this. Fortunately, right now, most of the wind is coming off the water, and we're not getting any of that debris. But as you were pointing out earlier, when that wind shifts around and we begin to get debris from the land, that is when it'll be time to take some cover. But we think we've got a pretty good spot here in a tall steel and concrete building. And that's what you want to be in. I'll tell you, if you're going to be in a Category 4 storm, I haven't been in an actual Cat 4 since Hurricane Hugo back in 1980. No. The buildings, those big hotels in Charleston, were blown through by the tremendous wind that hit them. I mean, the windows went out. Even huge buildings did not survive unscathed. So that remains to be seen. But as you report, the storm is moving fast right now. If we'd hoped that perhaps it would weaken some on landfall, as you know, when the storm
He's
is
braver
moving
than I am.
rapidly,
I would not be there.
there's less of a chance for that to happen. Maybe you see a police vehicle still patrolling out here. I think they're about ready to come in, though, would be my guess. Chet?
Yeah, I would think, the scary part of all of this is your winds should increase dramatically, episodically over the next hour. Every 10 minutes, they're going to be much stronger. Within a half hour, rocks should be flying.
I know, and that's when, of course, we want to take cover. We've been looking, though, in the direction of the debris, and there's nothing coming at us. This place, you point out, and it's going to change, and we're going to get, I mean, as strong as these winds are right now, it is nothing like what is in that eye wall. And even if it doesn't hit right here, if it's to the east of the sun,
Hey, girl,
as you know,
Allison,
there'll
hi.
be some debris coming by, so...
Yes, Allison, I am scared for all those people. Oh my God, I wouldn't be out there.
You're closer to hundreds of yards from the beach than miles from the beach. Front Beach Road, you're right on it. First thing to hit will be you.
Yeah.
He needs to get inside.
Well, exactly, and that's the thing. We wanted to be close, obviously. I had gotten down to the beach earlier to see what the surge was like, and, it's not coming directly at us right yet. So, we don't see any evidence of the surge coming over the berms. But, that could happen. As you point out, we still got a long way to go here. We're just starting in the real fun stuff here now.
Just to let you guys know, my cousin Mary did make it out. She's in a concrete steel enforced building.
Just the west side.
She's not at her house.
Side, so your winds will be coming eventually from the shore, and enormous force.
That's in trouble. Exactly. That's when, we're seeing these big, high rises out here, but to the other side of the road, there's a lot of just regular homes and with regular roofs on them, and God knows they'll are the kinds of buildings that'll start to come apart, and that's when we'll start to see debris launching back this way, and that is, of course, when we will...
If you don't mind, I'm going to leave it here. If you agree, please give it a thumbs up.
No, but none of us are out here because we don't want to be here.
We're actually seeing it happen.
We certainly appreciate these tremendous displays of...
Yes,
of
you're
Mother Nature.
right.
Those of us that
Any
cover these
debris
storms,
hits him, you're right.
Have done many times yourself. You have to have an appreciation for this, and frankly, not to speak editorially, but I would much rather cover man against nature than man against man any day.
I'm with you all day. Jeff, thank you. Nicole Ensalada on the beach in Panama City Beach with some damage now. Look.
Jeff, you might be able to see the wind and the trees, just how it is shooting through here. And a little while ago, I don't know if you could hear that. That sounds like roofs or something. Something's gone. I'm not really sure if the microphone could pick that up, but boy, that was really loud, and you can tell that was not wind. That was just something that was starting to move. Okay, and another transformer just blew, I'm just being told. Let's walk down here. Again, we're undercover, so we're okay, but I want to show you now the water, and now you can start to see all the debris that is in the water that's flying this way, flying toward the Gulf. There you go. See all those pieces of metal? None of that was here. There's another one. It feels like the wind is coming from the north. And there went something else. See all this debris? None of this was here 5 minutes ago.
That's because as the storm approaches, remember the eye of the storm is to the east of where she is. So she says it feels like the wind is coming from the north. It is, because there's counterclockwise circulation around the eye of that storm. The eye of the storm is to her right as you look at a map. So the wind
I'm
would
gonna
be
leave this
coming
running, guys.
offshore.
I gotta get
Remember,
my
the
dog out.
coastline
He
of
hasn't been
Northwest
out all
Florida
day.
is like an east to west thing. So the wind is coming out of the north, offshore onto the water. Eventually the beaches will have no water on them for some period as that eye moves to the east of Panama City. Let's go straight to the National Hurricane Center. Ken Graham is there. Ken, you've been saying as far as eye wall pet crossing is looking more like Mexico Beach, which is east of Panama City and east of Tyndall Air Force Base.
Yeah, getting really close to Mexico Beach. You can kind of take a look at it here, just right offshore, and that's the area where we have the highest winds. I mean, the latest reading is 150 miles an hour, so getting really close to the coast. A brand new piece of information, too. Even in these rain bands away from the center, Apalachicola just gusted to 87 miles an hour. So, you know, it's around this eye wall, incredibly damaging. The structural integrity of these structures could collapse. You could have some roof damage and incredible power outages associated with the trees down as well.
Looking at a particular area, you certainly hope the eye wall doesn't go over a heavily populated area like Panama City. It looks like it'll go east of there. But Ken, that is not to say catastrophic damage isn't ahead for that whole coast.
Yeah, it really is. When you talk about a Cat 4 hurricane and you look back at history, Shep, back to 1851 in the records, we haven't found a Category 4 in this area, so it is unprecedented. It's extremely dangerous. And you think about the width, when you really step back a second and look at the tropical storm force winds extending out. The latest we have 175 miles. The hurricane force winds around that center for 45 miles. So the way to look at it isn't that center point. It's a swath of winds and staying a hurricane even into Georgia. So not just those power outages and damage along the coast, but even into central Georgia.
You look at this, the rains and heavy rains are all the way up to Montgomery. That's 120 miles north of the coast. This storm is going to cause enormous water. Atlanta, it's on the way.
Yeah, it really is. When you look at the rainfall, and that's one of the problems we have. We have been taking a look at the storm surge, but the rain as well. Look at this swath. I mean, 6 to 10 inches right there on the coast and stretching into Georgia. But this is the other problem. You have 4 to 6 inches of rain that stretch through Georgia into the Carolinas. So you take, hurricane force winds, tropical storm force winds, you saturate the soil with this rain, you're going to drop the trees. You're going to have power outages deep into the inland areas, but right along the coast, absolutely catastrophic. I mean, a Category 4, unprecedented winds.
What would you expect to see along the coast where that 15 miles of eye wall crosses at 145, 150 miles an hour?
You're going to see all the trees down. You see power lines down. The power outages will last for weeks. You'll be seeing structural damage, roofs off houses, buildings collapsed, buildings completely destroyed. So part of it's the rain, but even the storm surge damaging, it could be as damaging as well. Think about this. Inundation 9 to 14 feet. That's not even the waves. So that's the inundation above ground. You put the waves on top of that. So those areas, waves plus that water, that's actually destructive as well. That storm surge could actually destroy houses and structures as well.
Ken Graham at the National Hurricane Center. Can't thank you enough. The forecasts have again been right on track. And remember the difference between this storm and the last one. The last one came ashore, it wandered around, it sat, it spun, it gave 40 inches of rain to some areas. The wind area of highest winds was smaller, so the kind of damage that happened once it finally got to shore. Remember, we were talking about a Category 4. It finally got to shore at a Category 1. The difference in the winds is enormous. This is going to hit as a very strong Category 4. It's going to hit within the next hour, an hour and a half. Never in recorded history of this swath of land in America has a storm of this magnitude hit. And I want to show you what we're learning now. This is the local radar. This shows us exactly where the eye of this storm is right now. It's moving at 14 miles an hour. The front end of the eye wall here is about 15 miles away. So about an hour from now, the eye wall is going to hit. What does that mean? 150 mile an hour sustained winds. In other words, as the eye crosses, it'll cross over a particular area. The eye itself is only about that wide, about a mile wide. So as it crosses, that
all right, guys, I'm back out here. Dogs
the
walk.
highest, strongest winds for just a few minutes, 10 minutes or so, but 10 minutes of 150 mile an hour winds with gusts to 175 can destroy everything. And exactly where the eye goes across. Remember, this is 15 miles across. So where's it going? We can now see where it's going. It's moving in this direction. The pattern is very clear. It's not deviated in any way. It's moving to the north-northeast. What does that mean? That means this is Panama City Beach here. So Panama City Beach, it looks like, is going to be on the left side of this storm. Might part of the eye wall catch it? It might. But see this large area of rain? This is extraordinarily strong rain with winds that have got a Category 2 this far out. We know that because hurricane force winds extend for 45 miles. Panama City Beach, Panama City, Parker, and Callaway, the East Bay, all the way up to Highway 22, Cedar Grove, even up to the Lower Grand Lagoon, Shell Island. All of that is about to get hurricane force winds. And the eye of the storm itself, we can see now, this is local radar. This isn't some speculation about tomorrow. It's moving. It's moving in this direction. Tyndall Air Force Base will get a direct hit from this storm.
Oh, gosh.
Allenton as well, down to Davis Beach. Mexico Beach is right here, also a direct hit from this storm because the eye wall is 15 miles wide. That's where it's going to go. To the right of this, look at all this rain. Apalachicola with a huge band of rain coming right now, and hurricane force winds, especially gusts, should be there. And the rest of the day, the story is inland, where the population centers are so much larger. Tallahassee will still be to the right of this storm. That means hurricane force winds, extreme rain, very heavy and sustained rain for Tallahassee. You're the hurricane center, say power outages potentially for days or weeks. Bainbridge, Georgia, up. And as we move north and east, Albany, Georgia, Moultrie, Americus, Columbus, Georgia, Montgomery, it is on the way. Hunker down now. Phil Keating is live for us now. Panama City Beach, Phil. I should say Apalachicola. Phil, the worst is an hour or so away, but now is bad.
Yeah, the Cat 4 beatdown is well underway here in Apalachicola. What you're looking at down below us, this is Water Street. That is a paved street. People watching at home may think that is just a river. That's not part of the river. That's just the floodwater and the storm surge being blown in by the latest highest gust recorded for Apalachicola was 87 miles an hour. And it's projected to get potentially even stronger and worse. And I tell you, the rain is flying horizontally. We're in that big outer rain band right now, or I guess at this point it's an inner rain band. But the raindrops feel like bullets, pellets, it hurts. Come over here and check out the river again. Apalachicola River flows north to south into the Gulf of Mexico. So typically on the left side of your screen to the right side of your screen, that's the way the water would be flowing. The wind of the hurricane and the storm surge are shoving all of that water, and it's a ferocious look at it. This river is heading back upstream, and it's going to have to get out of the bank somewhere, and most of Franklin County is extremely low lying. In fact, all the counties around in this area are very low lying.
Phil Keating, please be safe. I'm cutting you off only because the President of the United States is speaking. 10 seconds from now, landfall of this hurricane is within the hour. Here's the President speaking from the Oval Office.
I'm gonna leave it on, guys.
I wanted to update you on Hurricane Michael. It's about 40 miles off the coast. It's starting to feel the effects now. It is a very dangerous Category 4. And just to remind the press, hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria were Cat 4s. These are big storms that we're looking at. So it'll hit the Panhandle, as you can see in this one right here, sir, and then it will go through Georgia and Carolinas. Unfortunately, on the tail end, we do expect additional rain in the Carolinas, which could lead to additional flooding. FEMA is leaning forward, as we are with our interagency partners. We're forward deployed, with search and rescue ready to go, in very close contact with state and local authorities. We've all spoken with the governor and local officials, and I'll turn it over to Brock to give additional detail.
Unfortunately, this is a Gulf Coast hurricane of the worst kind because all of the elements associated with hurricanes come into play. So as you see on the left, the storm surge estimates are anywhere between 9 and 14 feet. Storm surge is going to be the worst where the eye makes landfall, just to the east or south of where the eye makes landfall. Somewhere right now it's projected between Panama City, Apalachicola, and then it's going to push forward. So not only is it going to bring 14 feet of ocean water and coastal flood inundation, there'll be wave action on top of that, which is the primary driver of why we evacuate, sir. And then coupled with that, you've got over 145 mile per hour winds. Structures built before 2001 are not designed to handle that type of wind typically. And it's going, unfortunately, the state. So we're asking citizens in Southwest Georgia, Central Georgia to be vigilant and make sure that they understand what's about to come, because this area is going to see a Cat 1, Cat 2 storm as it moves inland. And with the vegetation there, what we're anticipating is a lot of downed trees impacting the power grid. And, here again, we're going to see a lot of devastation along the coast structurally. And then as it moves in, you're going to see power outages throughout the state. And then, unfortunately, you're going to see rainfall into South Carolina and North Carolina. The Cape Fear was projected to start receding from Hurricane Florence 2 days ago, and this will basically exacerbate the problem and add to it a little bit to where it's going to keep those waters from receding a little bit as it exits the state by Friday.
So they're reporting that this is one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit our country. Is that actually a fact?
Well, so more in this area, this would be the most intense hurricane that's struck this area since 1851, if I remember correctly. So this would be intense, very intense. But
and this one is going to be heavy rain, or is it going to be the winds that are going to be the brunt?
Storm surge and winds, and then for Georgia, they're going to see high inland winds. So you may see sustained Category 1, Category 2 winds with higher gusts that are associated. So we're expecting a lot of damage inland as well. But we have leaned forward with Governor Scott and his staff and Director Westmall down in Florida. They've been leaning forward as well. And, right now there's no identified shortfalls when it comes to pre-positioning. So we have teams, equipment, personnel, not only with and embedded with state of Florida staff and some of the local county emergency managers, but we have equipment and teams staged in Maxwell to Atlanta to Orlando, ready to move in once the elements subside and push through, and then we can move in and attack.
And we're working really closely with the private sector. So we've got 14 states, different utilities from 14 states are already ready to help with any energy outages.
Electric companies are from all over the country. They're all lined up. As soon as it goes by, they're going to be working. And we've got food supplies, food chains. We're working with all of the states. And let me ask you, this started out very innocently a week ago. This was a small storm in an area they never thought this, and it grew into a monster.
Right, so the first initial indications from the National Hurricane Center started coming in around Saturday, and they picked it up and started raising the flag that, hey, this system's going to go from a wave to a depression and could potentially rapidly intensify. And unfortunately, that's typical of the Gulf Coast, and when they do this, citizens have less time to prepare or heed the warnings. We are concerned that many citizens chose not to heed those warnings, but we're prepared with search and rescue teams to try to go in and do what we can.
Any questions, please?
Yes, are you concerned that folks in Florida and Georgia in the storms have performed good enough and that there aren't enough evacuations?
Yesterday, we were concerned that we did not like the level of evacuation activity that we were seeing, and Governor Scott, kudos to him. He leaned forward, used the new wireless emergency alert capabilities that we have, and sent out text messaging last night, leaned forward and said, hey, get out of there. And so we were trying to get people to really
Thank you for the thumbs up, guys.
Seriously. A lot of people did heed the warning, but then there are those who chose to stay behind. And unfortunately, first responders may not be able to go in and rescue those who dial 911 at this point.
Mr. President, can you give us a sense of the officials you've been in contact with?
I have, and the other governors, depending on what happens here, but they are all either contacted or are in the process. I had a long talk with Rick Scott, Governor Scott of Florida, very well coordinated with all of the states. And, one of the things that must be said is it's not so easy for some of these people to leave. Some of the areas are very poor. Not easy for a person without the necessary money to leave. So what we've done is we've sent buses, we've sent a lot of different, we're doing a lot of different things to try and remove people from the area, but a lot of people are very poor in certain of those areas, and it's very tough for them to leave. That's one of the problems you're finding, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, in some cases, what we ask to do on Blue Sky Days is ask people who may not have the means or the mechanisms to get out of town to register with their local emergency management agencies, and Florida's been pretty robust in doing that so that we have some idea of how to pre-plan for that. And then, you know, we do what we can to be able to support the movement of people. When it comes to Georgia, you know, we're not evacuating for storm surge in Georgia. This is going to be high winds, so we're asking people to get within a facility that can withstand the winds and try to shelter in place or seek out public shelters that may be
Hey,
open.
sweetie,
in Southwest
I can't read the text. If somebody, I saw a quick one, but I can't read it. Try it again.
That area basically is the area which is going to hit pretty heavily. And that's a lot of shore. It's a lot of land.
It would be 4 feet and storm surge all the way down to Tampa Bay, which is, you know, is very low lying and floods very easily. But to give you that idea of the breadth of its path, it is quite large.
It's almost the entire size of the Gulf.
No, I can't read the
When you
text.
look
I
at
am
it
out
topically,
front.
It's almost the entire size of the Gulf, and they haven't seen that. Maybe they haven't seen that at all.
I'm having a hard
Nobody's
time
seen that
reading
before.
text.
The eye diameter is pretty wide, which
I'll get to the
unfortunately
computer.
is not
Hang
good
on.
news as it makes landfall. So some people may say it's similar to an EF3 tornado making landfall in areas that are close to the eye. So it's
Did last year's hurricanes in the area impair the infrastructure or weaken it in any way that they would struggle to deal with this year's hurricane?
not in this area. Irma did not really heavily impact the Florida Panhandle. Most of the hit from Irma was in the southwest portion of Florida, and then moved up through and created some issues in the Jacksonville area, northeastern portion. But this area, it's been a long time since it's been hit, so the vegetation hasn't been stressed, and we're going to see, you know, a lot of damage and devastation, unfortunately. And we have to set the citizens' expectations that the power is going to be out for a while. And what FEMA's role in that is, as the Secretary was saying, our partnership with the private sector is that, you know, we work with the Florida Power and Lights, the Gulf Powers, the Southern companies, the Georgia Powers, to be able to help them, you know, facilitate their mutual aid to come in. And they've got power crews coming in from multiple states across the country that are already pre-staged. And when we're hit, we work with them to do what's called first push debris to get the roadways open and so that we can get them down the roadways to start fixing the power. But that's going to take some time.
Well, we don't know. I know I was going to Pennsylvania. It looks like there are thousands of people already lined up, and probably will do that tonight. And we're going to go down here as soon as we can. We don't want to interfere with anybody, but we want to go as soon as possible. You have, you know, right nearby, we have thousands of people going tonight, and many are there already. What time were you going to be there? What time were we planning on that? Yeah, it's about 7. Well, I don't know what to do because you have so many people already there, and it's sort of unfair to them. So it's a mix.
So moving on to other topics, and I want to show you now that there are changes that are significant that are happening. This is the local radar. So they make their forecast as close as they can. You heard the National Hurricane Center say we think this is going to hit in a particular town, Mexico Beach. That's what they thought it was going to do. This is live radar. This isn't a projection. This is what the storm is doing. That's the eye moving in real time. This is a time lapse, and that last view is where it is at this moment. It is not moving to the northeast in the way that was suggested before. It is, or to the northeast. It is moving in this direction, and it appears now, if it continues on this track, that the east side of Panama City, meaning Callaway and Parker and the East Bay in Panama City and everything to the east of that, it's appearing now that the eye wall may actually cross over. And there is a possibility now that the western eye wall itself may cross over parts of Panama City and Panama City Beach. Remember, Panama City Beach is this way. Here's Panama City. You come across a bridge here and get over toward Panama City Beach, and it's this long stretch. If memory serves, it's about 27 miles of white sand beaches. Some of it is residential, with older residential homes on stilts, and some of it is high rises. Some of it is sprawling resorts, but it's 27 long miles. But again, all of that is to the west of Panama City. We're not talking about the eye hitting that. Look at this eye here. It's coming in this direction. Here's Panama City. Here's the city, here is the beach. It's looking like here's Tyndall Air Force Base. It's looking like the eye of this storm may clip Panama City. And that means the little suburban towns of Parker and Callaway, not large populations, but Parker and Callaway at least may get a touch of this eye wall. Same with Cedar Grove and Springfield, and maybe Panama City itself. Not the western side of Panama City, like over by the bridge, but on the eastern side of Panama City. And I'm going to back out now so you can see where this is going. This is the eye wall itself. This is real-time movement. Here's Tyndall Parkway. Here's Mexico Beach. The National Hurricane Center had been saying in the last hour, it looks like Mexico Beach may take a direct hit. Well, this is moving this way, and here's Mexico Beach. So instead, it's to the left of Mexico Beach. And could Panama City be hit by this? The town itself, not the beaches, it could. But look at this rain wrapping around.
Like I said,
this is extremely
they don't know
heavy
where it's
rain,
going to come
and all
in.
of this
Nobody can
area
predict it. It keeps
is still
changing.
hurricane force winds. So, for instance, Panama City Beach would have winds coming off the land and onto the water at 120, 110, 130 mile an hour plus winds. So rather than the winds going onto the buildings on Panama City Beach, it'll be coming from the land and off because of that counterclockwise circulation. And then everything to the right, this is where the more serious storm surge would be. 10 to 13 feet, they've said, all the way down to Apalachicola. And look how far the rain extends now. All the way, is that Opelika?
It is a high-end Category 4.
All the way up to Opelika, Alabama, which is basically Auburn and Opelika
Sustained
are right
winds
next
at
to each other.
150,
That's Auburn
gusting to
University. This is
175.
Montgomery, Alabama. Columbus, Georgia. It's on the way to Tallahassee, Macon, Georgia. This storm is headed in that way, and it is going to be disastrous. Phil Keating is in Apalachicola now, and the conditions are deteriorating. Phil?
Yeah, they certainly are, Shep. Some hellacious wind and rain happening right where we are. This is another view looking westerly from our second floor balcony here at the hotel. Incidentally, this hotel is now surrounded by a moat, 3 to 4 feet and rising. No one can leave unless you want to wade chest or waist deep out to your car. But off in the distance, you can see the cars in that parking lot. The water's already halfway up the wheels. And that's the highest ground of the parking lot. So heading back over here, this is Water Street again. And that's an exit sign here at the hotel that was coming off. There's already been a lot of debris and trash washing up the street. That's Water Street again. That's the street. You see the buildings, these tin roof buildings peeling back now. There has been episodes of gutters on this hotel falling off, as well as things flying through the air, and that's the whole danger of the wind speed, because everything that's picked up by the wind flies at the rate of speed of 2/3 that of the wind. And so, you know, you have a 150 mile an hour hurricane, that's 100 mile an hour 2x4s or whatnot flying your direction. And that is why everybody has been ordered in this county. In fact, all the counties in the Big Bend and Pensacola or Panhandle area to shelter in, stay home. It is an order, not a recommendation. Everybody, nobody's on the streets throughout this entire region of Florida. It is simply too dangerous, and you can look right there and see why. It's too dangerous to go down to that water. The water is moving fast. The winds are whipping in these bands. The rain hurts, and to show you again, the Apalachicola River, which runs down into Apalachicola Bay and St. George Island to the southeast of here, that's an extremely low-lying island. And according to the sheriff's deputies I was speaking with last night, everybody evacuated that island very smartly. Wow, that's a good wind. So that's the river that should be flowing left to right, but instead is being blown back upstream. So that's why this entire region is expecting some serious flooding in the next day or two, if not longer than that. The water's got to go somewhere, and right now it's not going where it needs to go, to the Gulf of Mexico. Chad, back to you.
The eye of the storm is now north of you, Phil. I have 20 seconds left, but it is past to the north and west of you, and you're on what amounts to the lower side, so the winds are going to shift.
Yeah, absolutely. The wind's right now coming from the Gulf, and then once the rotation changes, then we're going to get the wind and the waves and the storm surge coming from the west side of the Big Bend.
And that'll be happening very, very soon. It's almost time for a top-of-the-hour reset. This is Fox News Channel, America's choice for news and information on cable. Our coverage continues right now. It's 1 o'clock on the East Coast, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and high noon along the Florida Gulf Coast, where a storm of historic proportions is now barreling down.
So they're an hour behind us.
Predictions now. This is a live look. This is the storm, with the rains extending from St. Petersburg and Clearwater, Florida, all the way up to Birmingham and Hoover, Alabama. Hundreds and hundreds of miles of rain, but here's where the storm is. This is live weather radar from the land showing not a prediction, but the actual location of the eye of the storm. And here it is. The projection was just about an hour ago that this storm, the eye wall, the center of the eye wall would go over Mexico Beach, which is here. That is clearly now not the case. The eye wall is going to move north and west, and when it comes ashore, it now appears it will hit somewhere along Tyndall Parkway, make a direct hit toward Tyndall Air Force Base, and the eastern top side of the city of Panama City. These are the Panama City beaches. The eye now appears headed directly for the city of Panama City itself. Around Panama City are enormous bays. This is St. Andrews Bay, Upper Lagoon, East Bay. These towns of Parker, Callaway, Springfield, Cedar Grove, Highland Park, all ready to get a direct hit from this hurricane. Let's get a live update from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Let's go live.
Welcome back to the National Hurricane Center. This is Ken Graham right here in our operations area. Looking at the clock, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. The latest update on Hurricane Michael. There are some new updates here. The pressure has dropped to 919 millibars, making this one of the top 3 or 4 lowest pressures of a landfalling hurricane in the United States. So very serious situation, very powerful hurricane. We're getting wind gusts at Port St. Joe of 106 miles an hour. And listen to we've been talking about the storm surge and you know, looking at 6.5 feet already around Apalachicola. So the water's coming in, the wind is coming in. And actually looking at radar, you can see a portion of this eye wall making it onshore between Panama City and Mexico Beach. Very powerful situation with the winds. And it's not just right around the center. We're looking at, you know, hurricane force wind gusts and these rain bands away from the center, and that could be incredibly dangerous. Look how far some of these rain bands stretch, and those are areas that you have the dangers of the tornadoes and also the high winds. But very dangerous situation as this eye wall makes it onto land over the next hour or so. This is something that we definitely want to talk about. Once the eye wall makes it on land, some people, if you're in some of these areas as we travel northward as a hurricane, could get some calm in the eye of the storm. It's very dangerous to be going outside during that time. That calm doesn't last long, and you still have the other side of the eye to get there, and that could cause a lot of problems for folks. So we'll be very careful about that. Taking a look at the forecast with time, catastrophic wind damage. We're looking at trees down, power outages for weeks. You're talking about structures collapsing, roofs off associated with this wind. But we got to look a little further inland too. So if you're watching this, we could still see a hurricane traveling further north into Georgia, and then tropical storm even into the Carolinas, as we have a tropical storm warning for that flow around the system and bringing some of those winds. So even inland, you can see some of these trees down and some of the impacts. Let's talk about those impacts. We talked about the wind. We talked about the dangers associated with the wind. We also have heavy rain associated with the hurricane. 6 to 10 inches of rain. Our Weather Prediction Center putting together these numbers right around the area of landfall, stretching into portions of Alabama and Georgia. But look how far that you can start seeing this 4 to 6 inches of rain with time. And that, with those winds, can knock down more power lines, could knock down some trees, causing some issues in those areas as well. So it's not just a coastal situation. Deadly storm surge. We've been talking about that for days, and they're already starting to get reports of the storm surge coming in, and that's the leading cause of fatalities in these tropical systems. So we spend time talking about this. 9 to 14 feet is the inundation forecast in this situation, and that we're looking at for Tyndall Air Force Base over to Osceola, River, and that's an incredible amount of storm surge. Think about that above the ground. On top of that, the waves. You can actually get destructive waves on top of those values as well. So traveling down the coast, even to Cedar Key, 6 to 9 feet, all the way into the Tampa metro area, 2 to 4 feet. Very dangerous situation, and we've been talking about not just an issue right on the immediate coast, because the water can go right over those barrier islands and then start forcing their way into the bays and the rivers. So some of these areas can see storm surge well inland. The red area there is greater than 9 foot of storm surge. So think about it. You could be 10, 20 miles inland and still see the impacts, not only the wind, not only the rain, but the storm surge well inland. So we'll be watching this storm, extremely dangerous hurricane, and we'll be watching it here from the National Hurricane Center.
Thanks very much. That's the 1 o'clock Eastern noon update from the National Hurricane Center. And as he mentioned, there have been changes. The storm has gotten stronger. The central pressure has dropped. Remember, this is a low pressure center. The lower the pressure, the heavier the winds and the stronger the storm, down to 119. That would make this the third lowest pressure upon landfall if it holds for an hour in United States history. And by far, nothing comparable, the strongest storm to hit this Gulf Coast since the 1850s. Remember, the storm that hit just over here, the storm Katrina, came ashore as a Category 2. This is a Category 4 and very close to a Category 5, 150-mile-an-hour winds. Exactly where is it going? We have another update here. This is live local radar. We talked about Mexico Beach earlier. Looks like Mexico Beach is going to be on the right-hand side of this storm. Horrible winds, wind gusts to 160 miles an hour, extreme storm surge all the way down here. The worst of the storm surge has not yet come for Apalachicola Bay up to Port St. Joe, all the way up Highway 98 to Mexico Beach, up Tyndall Parkway and Tyndall Air Force Base. From what we can, this is Tyndall Air Force Base right here. This is the eye of the storm and it's moving there. Tyndall Air Force Base is about to take a direct hit.
Guys, this is all live on my TV set from Fox News right now.
In addition to that, somewhere in Panama City is going to get clipped by the western edge of the eye wall. See this western edge? The blue in the center there, that's the worst of the winds and the rains. That's 145, 150 mile an hour sustained winds plus extreme driving rain. And that the hurricane force winds extend for 45 miles. All of this rain, this red is extreme rain. That's going to cover all of Panama City, back over toward the Back Beach Road, Front Beach Road, Middle Beach Road, about halfway up the 27 miles of Panama City Beach. Most of PC Beach, that 27-mile stretch, all the way up into South Walton County, Seaside, Seagrove, and all of that, their wind is going to be coming from the shore to the land. Their beaches will go for miles in some areas.
That is live radar he's looking at, live radar.
The water will inundate Port St. Joe, all of this area around Apalachicola, and then will eventually make its way into Bluntstown. If you live in Bluntstown or Chattahoochee or Mariana, this is your storm. A hurricane force wind is coming to your town in a matter of hours. Hunker down now. Rick Leventhal is on Panama City Beach, the eastern end of Panama City Beach, right before you get to town. The western side of the eye may clip you. Rick, how is it now?
It's actually not as bad as it was about 2 minutes ago, and I expect it's going to get worse again. We just heard from Bay County officials. We're in Bay County, and they say that it is no longer safe to travel, that the time to evacuate has passed. As a vehicle goes by, I believe that's a media vehicle. They got a bunch of gas on a shelf on the back of the car. The county officials say the time to evacuate has passed. The people need to shelter in place. Highway Patrol has closed the bridges because the wind speeds are just too high. And basically, if you're home and you need to shelter in place and you need to call 911, there's no guarantee anyone can come and rescue you.
You guys watching, share this link.
Any local fire department.
We need to get it out to as many people as possible.
But they're warning people not to expect that to happen. Chuck, we've been watching the stand of pine trees over here. I was in Charleston for Hugo back in 1989. We saw a forest of trees like this snapped in half by the force of the winds. And if we get Cat 4 winds here, you can expect a lot of these trees are going to wind up down. They've been bending pretty significantly, and we've seen a lot of stuff flying around, including this metal sign. We're trying to stay out of harm's way here. We got the protection next to us, but there's a lot of debris flying now as these winds pick up. We've seen some fences down. We can give you a look over this way. The lights flashing now, the traffic lights. They've been working on and off, but wow, this thing's about to. You know, it's just we're getting some pretty significant gusts now, and we don't know how much of this stuff is going to survive since, as you said, this part of the Gulf Coast has never had a Cat 4, as far as we know. It's never been hit with winds quite this hard. So we don't know how many of these buildings are rated or how many of these buildings will survive whatever winds we wind up getting. I have seen some transformers flashing in the distance. We got one over us, so we're probably going to move back to a slightly safer position here in a couple minutes, yeah.
All right, Rick, we're going to keep your video up, and I'm going to tell people, Rick is just to the west of where it looks like this eye is going to come ashore. So they will get hurricane force winds. They could get Category 2 force winds, but the city of Panama City itself will get worse. I want to come back to this map again because this is the live local radar. This is the eye wall. This eye wall will hit within this hour somewhere along Tyndall Parkway and Tyndall Air Force Base, sandblast. So that's the beach area. Panama City, this is the beach, Panama City Beach. Panama City is actually inland. So by the time this eye wall goes across Tyndall Air Force Base, comes up to Parker in Northwest Florida, then hits Panama City, hitting Panama City proper is another 2.5 hours away. We know because the storm is moving, the eye of the storm is moving at forward speed of about 14 miles an hour. So it's going to take that long. The distance between here and there is more than 15 miles. So it'll make landfall within the next hour somewhere around Tyndall Air Force Base and continue in this general direction. Parker, Cedar Grove, the eastern side of Panama City, Bayou George, all the way up into Youngstown, Broad Branch, and the rest of this area of Northwest Florida. A Category 4 is on its way. Jeff Flock is on Panama City Beach. He's further west. We don't think the eye will hit him, but Jeff, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, no, it's close, but yeah, I think we missed it this time. We got our camera going back into the protection there, because I'll tell you, you lose the camera, as you know, you lost TV. Yeah, you're right. I don't think we will get, and it's remarkable, Shep, thus far, we have seen remarkably little damage despite this kind of wind. And as you point out, we'll only probably get 2 force winds at the worst. But, you know, that can still do a fair bit of damage. But at this point, and I guess those winds are really not on us yet, at this point, I haven't seen any major. And of course, these buildings are built, you know, to withstand this. This is one here. This is 25 stories tall. Of course, as you know, we've got a room up there on the 23rd floor. I don't really want to spend any time up there because what you're seeing down here is amplified as you go higher. So we'll stay down here. I think we're okay. But yeah, we're getting it, and we're not going to get the very worst of it, but not the very worst of it, as you can perhaps tell, is actually quite a show. Jeff?
It certainly is. Real quickly, back to the map. When this storm comes forward, here's Panama City Beach right here. The eye is moving here. So first they'll get winds out of the north, and then when the storm moves up, they'll get winds out of the west. So eventually you'll have water coming at you from the west, Jeff. I'd say 3 hours from now.
What did you say? How many hours?
Water from the west in 3 hours. Water from the north now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're getting now. And again, that's why, you know, we're getting it in a situation where it's not blowing potential debris at us, although there has been damage. I don't know if you see, well, the door blew off of the hotel, but, you know, nothing catastrophic. As I walk maybe closer up to get out of the wind. So, you know, so far so good here. Police still out on the street, by the way. They have not pulled it in, so that's another sign that it could be worse.
Jeff, hang tough. I will come right back to you. I want to show everybody where we are again because the very specifics of this map are very important. Let's make it at least big enough so they can see it. And I won't stay on it for long, but it's important. First, real quick. Here's the area. Here's Panama City, right? Here's the city itself. Here's the barrier island. Here's Panama City Beach. Here's the hurricane. And the hurricane's coming right here. So this is Panama City Beach over here. Panama City Beach, maybe you'll get Category 2 weather, but East Bay is going to flood.
Sorry.
Parker, Callaway, Panama City. You're getting a direct hit on the east side, and you're getting it in the next couple of hours. Let's go to WSVN 7. They are live. To who now? They're in Destin, Florida, which is to the west of here by about 50 miles or so. Listen.
6 airports in this region shut down. Already 50,000 people without customers without power. Obviously, that number is going to grow by a large amount. But we are just entering what is expected to be the worst. Coupled this rain, this wind, coupled with the storm surge that we'll be seeing. Hopefully, not too bad here, but further across the Panhandle and over into the Big Bend. Those are the biggest dangers that they are telling people that they just have to ride out and wait till this evening before they can even begin to think about doing an assessment.
That reporter in Destin, Florida, which is far west of the center of circulation, they'll be getting winds out of the north. They'll get tropical storm force winds for sure. They'll get a lot of rain, and some of the bayous there around Destin, Destin East Pass, For those of you familiar, the world's luckiest fishing village is where he is. You may see Destin East Pass empty out because the winds will be so strong out of the north. Remember, it's an east-west area, pushing into the Gulf of Mexico with that counterclockwise flow. Destin's East Pass, the Grand Bayou there, over in Fort Walton Beach, all along Okaloosa Island there, all the water. Imagine just the beaches going on as far as you can see, because the water will move out to shore because the storm is to the east. Now move east of the storm itself, where the worst of the storm surge is going to be, Apalachicola Bay, and let's go right to our correspondent there. Who's standing by? Phil Keating, to you.
Yeah, I'm here, Shep. Well, this is looking west from our hotel. It's actually, the wind speed has gotten too bad to look up Water Street, although you can pan around and see what it looks like. It's a whiteout of wind and rain. These are some strong winds. The trees are all getting whipped around. There's debris and trash all over the place. Rooftops peeling off, debris flying. I mean, just look outside. I mean, it's like a snowstorm that's so white, but this is flying rain that's hurting your skin when it hits.
There is breaking news now on Fox News Channel. This storm has just made landfall. It's made landfall along Tyndall Parkway and Davis Beach. This is the front end of the eye of the storm, and right now along this tiny stretch of land just west of Davis Beach, they are now in the eye wall. We can report it because this is live weather radar that is perfectly specific, and we now know that the landfall has been made just west of Davis Beach along Tyndall Parkway or Highway 30. Highway 98 will be getting the eye wall now. And right now here, the very worst of this storm, whenever you have a storm like this, the upper right quadrant, if you're around storm, that's the worst every single time. And that's where the worst is. Davis Beach, Mexico Beach just got it, Tyndall Parkway, Farmdale, Allenton, Bayou Point, and all of East Bay, which is just around Tyndall Air Force Base. This eye is about to come over. And we had said it looks like Panama City is going to get clipped by this, and it now appears we were right. Parker and Callaway, the western side of the eye of this storm, appear to be headed right for you. The eastern side all the way over to Overstreet, Highway 22. The storm has made landfall. We have not yet gotten the alert from the National Hurricane Center, but the radar does not lie. The storm has made fall, and the next hour is going to be crucial. People down to Mexico Beach and Port St. Joe and areas for 100 miles in all directions. Back to Phil Keating. Phil, it's now very well north of you, and you should start getting winds out of the west in Apalachicola very soon, if not already.
Yeah, because of the geography of the Big Bend, with the river on the east and the Big Bay, the Gulf of Mexico on the west, as the winds are coming up, as the hurricane approached going north, it was all coming from the south. As soon as the eye gets even further north, we're going to get the bottom side of the storm, that rotation coming in from the west, and that could cause even more storm surge over there. That's right across US 98. That's the only way west and north out of here to the west side. The bridge takes you over to the east. That's closed. The rain, I'm telling you, is hurting. And if you don't know why, all of the emergency operators and the mayors and the sheriffs are telling everybody by order, stay indoors, shelter in all day. This is why. It is way too dangerous to be outside. If we did not have this shelter of the hotel, it would be life-threatening, and that's a real fact. Look at the trees. It's so white. The rain has really picked up. This is a serious band of this hurricane. It's really picked up steam over the last 3 or 4 hours, and this is one of the worst periods. I mean, it comes and goes. That was one of the worst bands so far. Curfew in effect all across the panhandle of Big Bend tonight. They certainly would be concerned about looting, as is always the case after hurricanes, but simply they don't want anyone going outside until the all clear is given by sheriff's deputies and law enforcement and emergency office managers. We've got to get outside. A lot of trees are expected to be across the roads once Michael blows through here, and maybe this evening the rain really kind of wanes and the wind starts going away as it speeds up through Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. But there's going to be a lot of trees down. Hermine, Hurricane Hermine, it was a Category 1 just 2 years ago here. There was no threat of storm surge like the 9 to 13 feet that this area of Apalachicola is getting with Michael. There were still trees down all over the roadways, according to those that were here. Power lines were down.
We just
Very
got a
difficult just
warning
to drive
here in
and get
Virginia
out and go
Beach for
places.
high winds
So that's what everyone was
until Friday.
anticipating. Again, not to mention the widespread power outages, and like I mentioned, we lost power right around 11:30 this morning after it had fluctuated all day long. So I can
now
only
I see
imagine
why.
that
We're in the
much
red
of
zone.
Apalachicola has no power, but at least these utility poles are still up. The street light poles are still up. Pretty much the only debris we've seen go down are things like dumpsters. That would have been from the storm surge most likely. But the winds are whipping. Jeff.
The storm is moving north and east, and it is to your northwest. So with each minute that passes, the eye of the storm is getting farther away from you. You'll see winds and water out of the west. But the worst of the winds, unless there's a crazy gust or a tornado, the worst of the winds should be now and 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. I can't even stand in the same spot I was for the past 2 hours. It's just, you can't stand up. It's that windy for me and for my photographer. So this is the shot we're going to get from the balcony for the most part. But, I mean, it is whipping. Chris, if you could come to your right a little bit. Let me see if I can get him over here and take a look. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's hard to stand up during times like that. It is blowing out there. Whoa! There goes the screen from behind me. That's great. That's the concern, flying debris. I mean, it is just ferocious outside. This is just this is a bad hurricane.
I would say the eye is about 60 miles, the center of the circulation is about 60 miles north and west of you now. And really quick, in the next maybe 10 minutes, the winds are going to switch from a northwesterly to a westerly area. And those trees that are blowing in one direction are going to shift. And that's a problem time.
Absolutely. It's, a lot of people on the western side of the Big Bend, they've had it maybe not as bad as Apalachicola and just east of it.
I'm waiting for that
St.
dead
George
tree
Island.
to go down.
There's been in St. Vincent Island just to the south of it. These areas have been really getting pummeled.
Thank you so much for sticking with me, guys. You guys are so awesome.
Periodically, 10 a.m. By 11:30, it was really starting to really get intense. And this is definitely some of the worst winds that I've seen throughout the day of this Hurricane Michael, a historic Category 4.
The eye wall has made landfall around just north of Davis Beach, just west of Davis Beach along Tyndall Parkway, on a tiny sliver of U.S. Highway 98, the beach road that runs all along the Florida Panhandle. On a tiny sliver, they are in the eye wall and will be for the better part of the next 40 minutes or so. But it is not a time to go outside, just the leading edge. The National Hurricane Center considers landfall when the center of circulation crosses over a landmass, whether it be an island, for instance, back during Hurricane Katrina around in Plaquemines Parish in Louisiana, whether it was Hurricane Camille back in the early 1960s in South Mississippi when it hit the tip there. Whenever the center of circulation crosses the land, that's official landfall. But make no mistake, the first eye wall, the beginning eye wall, has made landfall in the Florida Panhandle, east of Panama City Beach, east of Panama City, right along Highway 98, just around Davis Beach. Davis Beach, Florida, which is just to the north of Mexico Beach, is about to get the eye wall itself. In fact, the eye wall is this moment. The eastern edge of the eye wall is hitting Davis Beach right now. Davis Beach, Florida, is getting winds at 145 to 150 miles an hour sustained with gusts higher. Griff Jenkins is at Alligator Point, Florida. Griff, what's it like there?
We'll walk out from it. Hey, Chef, how are you? We are in Alligator Point. We're on the north side of the Off-Monty Bridge. We can show you what it looks like. It's that storm surge we've been talking about coming up. And, you know, it's I thought we got here, so might not be perfect, but you get the idea. It's a circle
More than welcome, Kim. I can just see that came up. I'm going to keep this up as long as I can. I got the phone put in the charger. Can't hear him.
Here on the north side of the bay, where out here from where we were down there, and we're 30 miles.
This is dangerous.
Of Apalachicola, and it goes all from here, Cedar Bay. This is where you get where this church can take some of a beating, and as you know, Jeff, is the Gulf shallow for miles, 10, 20, 30 miles. It's very shallow. There's a problem with that it brings surf. So even as owl comes up,
He's talking, but I can't hear him.
Shoving it in place and then trying to get out because this ice then becomes like the bear when you get landed, you're naturally going to cultivate a run forward. As we look here, you can see the debris blowing out of the bay now. The other side of the bay, we're getting cover from the bridge on the other side. It's flooded several feet already. And our flood corner
Alert to just white to it. A WSVN live coverage now. This is Panama City Beach. Listen. Nicole Ensalada reporting.
All of this debris from on top of the buildings, on top of the neighborhood behind us, toward the Gulf. We certainly do not want to be in the way of any of that debris. And we are not. So just so you know, we are in a secure area where we are blocked from all of that. So that's good for us.
So this is on the west side of the storm. So the wind coming out of the north, the water blowing from the land to the sea. So all the debris from the land is moving toward the beach. The local NBC television station where I worked 30 years ago has now lost its roof on Panama City Beach. They're on the west side, the dry side of the storm, and yet they're taking a pounding. Nicole Ensalada on the beach. Listen.
We don't want to, panic anyone who might have friends or family here in Panama City. We just don't know. But it is about a half a block away. We noticed it yesterday that some folks had actually boarded up some of those mobile homes. We do not know if anyone had actually stayed. We did not see any signs of that. So that's good news that those folks would have left because this is a mandatory evacuation area. Let's give you an idea of just how hard that wind is blowing. Look at that.
So Nicole, if you can hear me, when do you feel like, okay, if you're just now joining us, I should interrupt and remind viewers that what you're looking at is a live picture of the eye wall of a very strong Category 4 Hurricane Michael coming ashore. Live pictures out of Panama City. The wind is incredible. The debris could kill you. And we show you these live pictures to show the strength of the storm and the damage that it is.
That's Lynn Martinez from SVN7 in South Florida. Specifics of where these people are, because 10 miles west of the eye of the storm. A minute ago when we were with Griff Jenkins, he's 80 miles east of the center of circulation. So that's how serious it is that far away. And I want to zoom in here and I want to take this full just for a moment. I know we hate doing that, but I want to take this map full because here's what's just happened. The eye has come ashore. There's Highway 98, the beginning edge. The center is when they consider it's made landfall. So in about 15 or 20 minutes, the National Hurricane Center will confirm what we can see. The eye wall is upon us. And where's it moving? It's moving to the eastern side of Panama City. Parker and Callaway and Sandblast, this left side of the eye wall, that's about to hit you. East Bay, and then it's moving inland. It'll still be a hurricane by the time it gets to Bluntstown and Mariana and Chattahoochee. Weewa Hitchcock, which is right along the way. Weewa, they call it locally. There's the dead lakes there. All of this will overflow. Extreme water is coming, and the storm has come ashore as a massive Category 4. Let's go back now to who's available. Is Phil Keating still there? Phil Keating, the winds should be shifting now.
So far, let me check. They do seem to be coming a little bit more from the southwest. But the river, oh my gosh, we got to see the river. It is just heading upstream, being blown by the storm surge and the hurricane winds. It is just dramatic out there. That is the Apalachicola River. Then you see an island. On the other side of that's the East Bay, which is a pretty large body of water. And then you hit Florida coastline again. The one
Going the
upside
wrong way.
of
Look
where
at
this
that.
hurricane is striking and where all of this 9 to 13 feet of anticipated storm surge is coming is it's a very little populated area. There's a lot of trees. There's a state forest. There's a Apalachicola National Forest. So there's really few people comparatively to the rest of the state, like along the southern and western coastlines, that live there. So fewer people will be impacted by the storm surge and these winds. But still, for them, that doesn't matter. It only takes one, and if it's you, it's got to be terrible. The stop sign's in the water. The stop sign itself is almost, it's about 1.5 feet away from getting to the red of the stop sign. But all these utility poles are still standing, which is impressive and certainly a positive thing here. But this is Water Street. Asphalt paved street takes you north and south here on the eastern side of Apalachicola. It's a complete river right now. Storm surge and floodwaters, a mix of fresh water from the river and mostly salt water from the Gulf of Mexico. But yeah, you can see the wind is coming very well. And it does appear to have shifted now. It looks like it's coming from the southwest heading northeast. It doesn't happen really super fast, so you've got to watch and pay and catch it every 5 minutes. But yeah, we narrowly escaped some flying debris. There's more debris flying off trees. I'm actually now you can really see right to left in your screen. The wind has shifted, coming from the west, heading to the east now as the eye moves north, and the bottom of the hurricane now affects this area, Shep.
And one place that it's hitting, and really awfully right now, is Port St. Joe. Remember, there's this counterclockwise circulation, and the worst of it all, the worst of the storm surge is going into Port St. Joe, Florida, right now. It's a small coastal community, fishing community, Niles right here, right along the St. Joseph's Bay. There's a barrier island, or there was. We'll find out what remains of it. We'll speak to the mayor of Port St. Joe and have official landfall of the storm right after a quick commercial break on Fox News Channel.
Do you remember when gold was just $20 an ounce?
All right, guys. I'm going to leave it run. I'm sorry, but it's hitting land and people's lives are now in more danger. I will leave it on. Please share this video so people can see. If you know people in Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, please share the video with them so they can see what's coming. Hey, they've gone almost an hour and a half with no commercials. It's fine. I want to thank you guys for watching with me. And let you know that you're all awesome for sticking with me. God bless you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I don't like commercials, so I mute them. My husband's been really patient with me taking over the TV today, so I can keep you guys abreast of what's going on. Commercials should be over shortly. The first one, like I said, an hour and a half. This is a very high-end Category 4. While the commercial's on, I'm going to go see what we got here. Hang on. Solomon Islands just had a 5.0 an hour ago. Sorry I didn't catch that. Big earthquakes are also hitting today. As soon as this feed is over, I will do an earthquake report. Lots of 5.1s, 5.0s, 5.3s. But I think this right here is more important. We need to cover it. I've got the alarm system set off on the phone, so I don't have to hear the alarms go off. Here we go.
The storm has made landfall and parts of northwest Florida are in the eye. This is Tyndall Air Force Base, U.S. Highway 98. The leading edge of the eye wall is ashore, and in Farmdale and along Tyndall Air Force Base, you are in the eye of the storm. Callaway and Parker, Florida, which is eastern side of Panama City proper, is about to get the western eye wall. Let's go right to Ken Graham, the National Hurricane Center. It looks to me like center of circulation will cross officially in less than a minute.
Yeah, Shep, you're right. And actually over my shoulder, they're typing up the product now. And we were just talking about it at a commercial break. It looks like landfall just northwest of Mexico Beach at 155 miles an hour. And that's between Tyndall Air Force Base and Mexico Beach. So you see it right there. We take the center point of that eye, and that's what the landfall. So just now, we're looking at that landfall.
Our radar, the local radar, is showing copious amounts of rain over Panama City proper. Not as much Panama City Beach, but Panama City is just getting beaten up.
Yeah, that rainfall is just incredible, these tropical rains. And it's interesting because they also handed me the latest observation. We got a gust of 129 miles an hour in Panama City. So incredible winds, incredible rainfall right around that center, just the intense rain. But we're also seeing this. A lot of times when you start having landfall and you start to weaken a little bit with time, you start spreading out those winds. So these rain bands will start increasing and you get hurricane force winds well away from the center in those rain bands.
I know we're losing. You have to move on. I can't thank you enough. Good luck there. We'll watch for the alert from the Hurricane Center. Really quickly again, full on this map if we could, because the exact coordinates of this thing absolutely matter. Here it is. You can see the eye wall is here. What's next? This is Parker, Bay Harbor, Callaway, Cedar Grove, and Panama City itself. 129 mile an hour wind gusts right there in Panama City. Let's back it out just a little bit. This down here is Port St. Joe. The eye has come and passed that area. Now extreme westerly winds are coming in, winds out of the southwest, and enormous amounts of water coming into St. Joe Bay. See this right here? Eglin Air Force Base Annex here, and then the St. Joseph State Peninsula Park. This is a barrier island that protects Port St. Joe. Let's go to the mayor who's live there in his home in Port St. Joe, sir. Bo Patterson, what is it like?
Conditions, just so much rain, so much wind. I don't know exactly what dust we're having, but we've got down trees. I'm at my house in the center of town, and there's trees down on the side of it, trees across the street from me, and trees on top of my house. I don't know how big it is. I just saw the limb hanging down. Those trampolines from next door blew out in my front porch. So it's bad. We're just hunkered down, and we're praying that all our residents that didn't get out are going to be safe. That's our main concern here in Port St. Joe as our resident.
Any idea, Mayor Patterson, how many people stayed behind?
Oh, I would say we probably got over 2,500 people left.
Oh, man. We're expecting a storm surge there, according to the National Hurricane Center, of 12 to 13 feet. And for that storm surge to go right over your barrier island out there, the St. Joe Peninsula, and come right into town, a storm surge of 12 feet in the city proper within the next couple of hours.
Yes, and we're looking out for that.
Does that put your house underwater, Mr. Mayor?
Not at the present time, no. But it may be before the day's over.
It may be. And there is breaking news now on Fox News Channel.
Well, let's go.
The hurricane has just officially made landfall just north and west of Mexico Beach, between Tyndall Air Force Base and Mexico Beach. That means the center of circulation crossed over the land within the last 2 to 3 minutes. And it did so with maximum sustained winds of 155 miles per hour. In 30 years of covering hurricanes firsthand and on the ground, I have never experienced a storm that when it actually made landfall, the eye of the storm, the eye walls, contained maximum sustained winds of 155 miles an hour. Unheard of and unprecedented in Northwest Florida. Not in recorded history has there been anything like that. And when you consider that well to the west of the eye wall, well to the west, dozens of miles west, on Panama City Beach, they recorded wind gusts of 129 miles an hour. We can expect wind gusts in some areas to reach 165, 170 miles an hour. And where the eye wall came ashore, along Tyndall Air Force Base and then inland, because the towns of Lynn Haven, Parker, and especially Parker and Callaway, maybe as far west as Springfield, are dead ahead. And though we have no reporters in the city of Panama City proper, population 37,000, that the storm itself is coming right over it. Just west of that city in Panama City Beach is where Rick Leventhal is. Rick, you should be getting pounded right now.
Oh, yeah, we are, Shepard. And there's a lot of stuff flying around, so I'm trying to protect myself as best I can. This is a piece of, I believe, the siding of our hotel. And if you look, after Pete cleans the lens, if you look past me in the parking lot, you can see a bunch of chunks of this stuff. It's pretty heavy, and it would hurt if it hit you, trust me. And beyond that, I mean, you could just see the wind swirling out here and the rain coming down. And it's definitely gusting pretty strongly. The palm trees seem to be holding up pretty well, but we were showing you the pine trees across the street. I'm not sure you can even see them now because it's gotten darker and the visibility has decreased pretty dramatically. But just watching some of these big SUVs in the parking lot here, Shepard, being bounced around by these gusts of wind, pretty remarkable how powerful it is. You know, I told you last hour that the officials here in Bay County have told people you have to shelter in place. The time to evacuate has passed. It's no longer safe for first responders to go out in this. So if someone's having an issue, is trapped, or has some sort of accident, they won't be able to get rescued. And that's why county officials were so determined to get people to evacuate. They ordered about 120,000 people in this one county alone to head for higher ground. And they said only about half of them observed that. So what we don't know is how many of those people might be in trouble or might get in trouble, and how long it might take for help to get to them. But we've seen some transformers blow. We lost power here at the hotel. There are some significant structures around us that are still standing separate, but we don't know if they'll survive the storm because they haven't seen anything like this in this part of the world ever.
And that said, you know, your winds are coming out of the northwest now, and as you well know, within about an hour, they're going to shift and come out of the west and then the southwest, and that's going to mean the trees that were blowing one way then blow the other, and that's when they become projectiles.
Yeah. Yeah, and the structures that were being weakened on one side, they get smacked on the other, and that could deteriorate them and force them to crumble or fall. And, you know, one of the things that the eeriest thing, Shepard, as you well know in these storms, is the noises that you hear, because you don't know what that crash is or what that breaking sound is, if it's something over your head or something about to fly at you. And we're hearing a lot of noises out here. It's pretty brutal.
Indeed it is. Rick, I want to look at this map full again because this is an extraordinary thing to see here. Let's take this full to screen off the map, and I'll manipulate it. Take bat 10 full, please. Bat 10 full. There you go, bat 10 full. So I'm going to zoom in real time, and you can see the eye of this storm, how it is right over Tyndall Air Force Base. Tyndall Air Force Base on the left side there, just reaching East Bay. In Parker, Florida, you're within the next 5 minutes. The western eye wall is going to cross over you. East Bay, you're getting hit now. Callaway, Florida, population about 2,000. You're about to be hit. And the eastern side of Panama City proper, as we've been saying for the last 30 minutes, will get this eye wall in the next 30 minutes. Straight to WSVN 7. This is near Mexico Beach in the heart of it all. Let's listen live.
Cat 4 right now, but a very strong Cat 4 with winds up to 150 miles an hour. It's moving at 14 miles per hour, but again, this whole area is going to experience some devastation. High winds, high surge, and rainfall flooding to come, possible tornadoes in all of this business. But this is bad news for northern Florida, also going to affect later as it moves inland, Georgia and northern South Carolina, which of course officials are on alert as well. The president of the United States was briefed by FEMA a short time ago in the White House. FEMA told everybody who was listening that expect some power outages for quite some time. Let's now go a little northeast right now to Young Pomeritz. He is in Destin, which is also experiencing a little bit of this.
Destin is actually well to the west of the center of the storm, and yet they're still getting a lot of weather. The rain now extends all the way up to Birmingham, Alabama, and it'll begin raining in Atlanta within the next couple of hours, and everything in between, from Dothan, Alabama, Marianna, Enterprise, Montgomery, Columbus, Opelika, Americus, Albany, just pouring rain in all of those areas. And on the backside of the storm in Panama City Beach, still wind gusts well over 100 miles an hour. If Rick Leventhal is available, let's get straight to him. Rick, it appears that the area where you are is going to get these sustained winds for quite some time.
Well, you're looking, I hope, right now at the parking lot outside our hotel where you can see those winds swirling and picking up debris and flying it around. It's definitely gotten worse, as we knew it would. I've been in 100-mile-an-hour winds. I'm not sure we're there yet. I'd be surprised to learn that we are. It definitely pushes you around, but I think my wind gauge isn't that accurate in winds these strong, Shep. Are you hearing we're getting 100 now?
Not where you are on Panama City Beach. I'm talking about in Panama City, which is a good 10 miles. 10 miles makes an enormous difference. Yeah. You should be in tropical storm force winds where you are.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But you know, still obviously dangerous, still doing some damage out here, and obviously we're in another bit of a lull. But the rain hasn't slowed down. You know, the big difference between this storm and Florence is that Florence had so much rain associated with it, and it was moving so slowly. This one, as you know, is barreling through here, and it's not going to dump as much water. So that's good news for the Panhandle. But the bad news is that with the winds predicted, and winds they haven't seen here before, there could be significant damage. When we were standing over on the other corner, I watched a sign get blown out, and another sign looked like it was about to come down. We saw a fence that had come down, and some trees that came down over there, and that was, I don't know, about an hour and a half ago before things got progressively worse. So, you know, they're going to be in for it here.
They certainly are. It's the center of circulation is now well over Tyndall Air Force Base. They've been in the eye of the storm now for the past 15 minutes or so. All of East Bay. So right where it made landfall, there is almost no residential housing. The entire 15-mile stretch. Certainly there is some in Davis Beach, some down in Mexico Beach, but not enormous population areas. If you live where this storm has just made landfall, this is a worst-case scenario. But if you look at the big picture of the northwest Florida coast, from Destin and Fort Walton Beach, across Okaloosa Island, continue to move east into South Walton County, Grayton Beach, and all the rest, Seagrove Beach and Seagrove Place, and continue to move to the east into Panama City Beach. All of that area, though it's going to get heavy winds and heavy rains, and there will be some destruction, the worst of it all is over Tyndall Air Force Base. And anybody knows the military, that you know they're ready for this. That's where the storm crossed, right at Tyndall Air Force Base. But what's next is Callaway and Parker. They'll get the western eye wall just beating those two towns, Parker and Callaway, which are eastern suburbs of Panama City. It's actually really grown into one town now. Panama City, Parker, Callaway, all one thing, Cedar Grove, East Bay. It's on the way north now to Bayou George, and then we believe it's going to take a turn to the right. If you're in the Tallahassee, the city of Tallahassee area, where I happen to have some friends who have hunkered down with their wives and children in their homes in a very low-lying area, you're about to get copious amounts of rain in Tallahassee. You can expect power outages and extreme wind gusts, but not hurricane-force winds in Tallahassee. It appears the storm is going to move to the west of Tallahassee. More serious problems for Mariana and Cypress and Chattahoochee. And as we move on in, Donaldsonville, once you get up into the state of Georgia, Blakely and Camilla, Georgia, all the way up to Albany. This will be your storm later in the day. There is no time to relax at this point. The eye wall of the storm is maintaining very good strength as it's moving ashore. As we all know, once it moves off the water and onto land, it's that warm Gulf of Mexico water which made this thing historic hurricane. But now that it's over the land, it will begin to diminish in strength. But make no mistake, this will be a hurricane for hours on end before it loses its strength from all of that moisture and all of that heat. The storm, by the time it reaches the area of Dothan, Alabama, Mariana, Florida, Camilla, Georgia, up toward Tifton and Albany, by the time it gets there, it's still potentially hurricane strength with lots and lots of rain. There's much more ahead for everyone in that area. WSVN is in commercial break. Our camera right now appears to be Rick Leventhal's. And Rick, the reason we can get to you, the reason your signal is still available is because you're so far west of this storm. I can't imagine what it was just like at Tyndall Air Force Base.
Well, I can imagine it because we've been getting some pretty significant gusts, and the swirling wind just it knocks you back. And as Phil was saying earlier, you know, it hurts. And when the rain hits you, it definitely hurts. We've got a pretty good live view signal here, Seth. You know, the technology allows us to broadcast without a satellite truck. And, you know, fortunately, we still have cell service here in this part of Panama City Beach. The hotel lost power. The entire area clearly is in the dark. And the wind continues to pound us, and so does the rain. But as I mentioned, a lot of signs down. But, you know, that's really that, and the minor property damage is all we've really seen so far. We have limited vantage point. We're not going to venture out into this until the worst of it's over. But so far, it looks like minor stuff, but there could be major stuff ahead.
Rick, it appears that there will be. It looks like the heavy rains are going to continue at least for the next couple of hours.
Well, that's great, because I'm already soaked, so I can't get any wetter.
What do you know about the number of people, especially in the city, you're on Panama City Beach, but in town and across Bay County who stayed behind?
Well, you know, what we heard from Bay County officials was that they had strongly encouraged everyone in the low-lying areas to get out. There were about 120,000 people who were under that mandatory evacuation order. And I talked to the guy yesterday. He was really frustrated, using language that I can't put on TV, telling me that these people weren't heeding the warnings, they weren't getting out. And he was really upset about it because he knew that once things got bad and people started calling 911, they'd be really hard-pressed to rescue them. And the last we heard was they're not doing it anymore. They're not heading out. It's not safe to be out. It's too late to evacuate. People need to shelter in place. And, you know, that number of 50% is not very good. If you want people to leave because they're in danger, their lives are in danger, and only half of them do, that puts half the population in danger zones at risk. So they're pretty nervous about how many people might still be in harm's way. I'll tell you what, though, we were on the Gulf Coast, we were on the beach. Shep, we were trying to find a suitable location to go live from, and every single hotel closed and made everyone leave, respected the mandatory evacuation order. Even one particular hotel that was going to let us stay there, at the very last minute, the 11th hour, said, you know what, no, we can't do it. We just can't do it. The owners were just too nervous about it. So they really were vigilant on the beach, getting people off the Gulf Coast and getting them to move further inland. Obviously, there are some people still there, and those are the people who could be at risk tonight.
Thank God they did, because that 27-mile stretch of beach, This is live pictures in Panama City proper, and you can see they're having some big problems. But that 27-mile stretch of beach in Panama City Beach is some of the most beautiful you'll ever see. The locals refer to it affectionately, the locals do, as the Redneck Riviera. Lived there for years and absolutely love it there. It has been spared complete disaster by 12 miles. This storm jogged to the right in the last few hours, jogged to the right by 10, 12, 15 miles, and as a result, Panama City Beach is not destroyed at this moment. By the luck of 12 to 15 miles, Panama City Beach was spared. But where Panama City Beach was spared, something else is being hit. The entire eye wall has now crossed over land at Tyndall Air Force Base. And the eye of the storm has taken the slightest of jogs to the east. They wobble as they come ashore. If you look at them meticulously, right now the western side of the eye wall is hitting the small town of Parker and Callaway, but only the western tip. I don't think Parker and Callaway will experience the eye. They're going to get hit by that western eye wall, and then they're going to be in the lower quadrant, and that's the same for all of Panama City proper. The west side of this storm is hitting Panama City, and it's hitting it violently. We will not know the extent of the damage in Panama City from the winds, but in the city of Panama City, whatever the damage is, it's going to be wind or tornadoes, not rain, because it's on the western side of the eye wall. The big water problems are going to be to the east, which means Mexico Beach and Port St. Joe, all of Apalachicola Bay. And then when you move around the Big Bend of Florida, serious coastal erosion there with enormous amounts of seawater coming in, 10 to 12 foot storm surge above high tide. So I'm talking about Apalachicola, East Point, the St. George Sound, High Bluff, Carabel, over to St. James Island, a little small town called Surf, and Live Oak Island. All areas that you've probably never heard of in the Big Bend of Florida. They call it the armpit of Florida because that's what it looks like. It's not heavily populated. It's a wonderful rural community sort of place where folks live simple, and in many cases they live off the water. What happens in Apalachicola Bay is the feeder, is the driver of the economy for this entire region. If you eat oysters in Florida, most likely they're from Apalachicola Bay, and how the oyster beds of Apalachicola Bay will survive this day remains to be seen. They could be shut down for years to come. We can only hope at this point. But the eye of the storm is now completely over land, and when I say land, I should say it's over East Bay, which is an enormous water body of water that is now filled with brackish water to the east and south of Panama City. And the hurricane itself, the eye wall is crossing over Highway 22, which runs east to Weewahitchka, which is a small town of about 2,000 that's getting hit pretty badly right now. And the front end of this storm is headed directly for Youngstown and eventually Chipley and Marianna, which are larger towns right along Interstate 10. This storm is going to cross over, the eye of the storm will cross over Interstate 10 from the looks of things on the map, probably in about 2 hours. And then it'll hit Chattahoochee and Donaldsonville up in Georgia, Malone, Marianna, Chipley. That's the direction of this storm. And Atlanta, you're about to get rains from this thing. Macon, Georgia's getting them now. Augusta's getting them now. Just areas of all over Georgia feeling the effects of this storm. And it's raining from this hurricane in Cape Coral on the southwest Florida coast, and in Fort Myers and Sarasota, up to Tampa and Clearwater, all getting rain, up to Live Oak and Gainesville and the Ocala area, raining in Thomasville, over in Valdosta, Georgia, and in Waycross and Douglas. The entire region experiencing rains from this massive hurricane that made landfall right about Tyndall Air Force Base, just north and west of Mexico Beach, sometime in the last hour. What's happening now is the eastern edge of Panama City. The city itself, not the beaches, but the city itself is getting pounded. They're expecting extreme winds, high water, especially to the east of the storm, sustained winds close to 130, 140 miles an hour within the city of Panama City itself. Along Panama City Beach, that 27-mile stretch, there will be damage, there will be power outages, but largely the worst of this storm has missed Panama City Beach, and unfortunately, it's been given to the Tyndall Air Force Base and people in Port St. Joe, Apalachicola, and points to the east. There is a lot to get to. The central pressure of this storm has dropped to 919 millibars, making it a historically powerful storm. If there's good news in this, it did not hit an extreme population center, at least not upon landfall. But the bad news is it's still on the move as a hurricane and moving inland. And areas of Georgia and northwest Florida, even northeast Florida, can expect copious amounts of rain and heavy winds in the hours ahead. Coverage continues now on Fox News. It's 2 o'clock on the East Coast, 11 a.m. on the West Coast, and 1 p.m. where Hurricane Michael has just struck along the Florida Panhandle. I'm Shepard Smith at Fox News World Headquarters in New York, on Fox television stations across the nation, and on the Fox News channel on satellite and cable. 155-mile-an-hour maximum sustained winds makes it the strongest storm ever to hit the Panhandle. Let's go to the National Hurricane Center for a live update.
Welcome back to the National Hurricane Center. I'm Ken Graham right here in our operations area. On the official clock here at the Hurricane Center is 2 o'clock Eastern. That means 1 o'clock Central. Let's look at the latest information on Hurricane Michael. Made landfall, pressure 919 millibars, winds 155 miles an hour, and really pretty strong system continuing. A lot of damaging winds associated. So let's look at the radar. And you can see that eye wall making it on landfall, an eye wall wind warning issued by our weather forecast office in Tallahassee, meaning just incredibly dangerous situation associated with the winds right around that eye. And we also got to look in this different areas as well. So some of these rain damage coming onshore, the tornado possibility, and some of the hurricane force gusts with those as well. So it's not just the center, it's well out from the center. Something else I definitely want to mention, if you happen to be in these areas, if you didn't leave and this eye comes through, it could momentarily get calm, but remember, you have the other side of the eye coming through, so stay safe, stay sheltered. It's a very dangerous situation, as you can see the sheer size. Where's it going? And you look at the size of it and where the system is headed. Look at these tropical storm force winds extending 175 miles away from the center, and even around the center, hurricane force winds 45 miles away. So we really need to not focus just on that center. You need to think of this as a large storm causing damage for a larger area than just the coast. So damaging right on the coast, power outages because of these winds could last several weeks. Just a serious situation, catastrophic with building damage, trees down, power outages, but not just the coast. We still expect hurricane force winds stretching on the Alabama-Georgia state line, and even moving into central Georgia could still have some winds pretty close to hurricane strength. So if you take the rain and you take those winds, you can have power outages and trees down, remaining dangerous through Georgia and portions of extreme southeast Alabama and also into the Carolinas. Taking a look at that rain, you can see just a lot of flash flooding, really serious situation. Anytime you have these tropical systems come in, the rainfall is very heavy, 6 to 10 inches of rain around the Florida Panhandle, up into portions of southeast Alabama, even into Georgia. Look at this large area of 4 to 6 inches of rain. So that's where you're going to have some of those winds, some of the saturated soils, and could be dangerous even in the inland. We've been talking about this storm surge, and we're looking at some of the latest values coming in, and it looks like we've already got 7.4 feet inundation over in Apalachicola. So the storm surge coming in with a vengeance. And even though the system's inland, you still can have that onshore flow pushing that water in. So just because the storm's inland, you're still not out of danger yet when it comes to that storm surge. We were forecasting and continue to forecast 9 to 14 feet in areas from Tyndall Air Force Base over the Osceola River, up to 14-foot above ground waves on top of it. And some of the images that we're seeing, you can see this damaging waves that can cause structural damage as well. So getting trapped in these pockets, you get these large amounts of storm surge. Even further away, well away from the center, you're still not safe. You can see elevated values, 6 to 9 foot above ground, all the way to Cedar Key, and even as far as Tampa, 2 to 4 feet above ground. So that's just not on the coast. You can see some of the storm surge goes inland as the winds continue to push that water further inland. So this has been Ken Gray with the latest updates on a very dangerous and very powerful Hurricane Michael.
Ma'am, thank you. We'll go straight to live reporters in just a moment. Want to show you where this storm has been and where it's going. You can see for the last couple of days, the eye has been so well formed and it's now made landfall. And you can see the direction it's expected to go. Once you get into southwest Georgia, see that? It's still a Category 2 storm by the time it hits there. And Atlanta will feel a lot of rain from this. Huntsville and Dothan and Opelika and Auburn, all of you are going to experience a lot of rain. And yet over in Pensacola, Florida, all that rain to the north. But in Pensacola, the sun just came out. I want to show you one interesting thing about this storm. This is the eye of the storm that has just come ashore. Those of you who have just joined us, especially on Fox television stations across the country, I want to zoom in. We watched this eye wall come across, and it entered right at Tyndall Air Force Base. This is Panama City and Panama City Beach. Here's the city, and here's Tyndall Air Force Base. That's where it came across. This is Mexico Beach here. So the strongest part of the storm, the eye wall, packing 155-mile-an-hour winds with gusts much stronger, enough to tear down homes, throw limbs of trees through the air like missiles. The very worst of it is in an area of almost no population. If you could have said, here's where the storm's going to go, pick an area where the fewest people live, and that's where the hurricane's going to come ashore, that's what just happened. Panama City, 35,000 people. Over here in Mexico Beach, pretty heavily populated. Tyndall Air Force Base, evacuated except for a few people, and they got absolutely the worst of it all. Where's it going now? It's going north and east. Youngstown, Bluntsville, straight on up toward Interstate 10. It'll be hitting Interstate 10 between Chattahoochee and Marianna, Florida, sometime in the next couple of hours. Let's go right to Rick Leventhal. He's live on Panama City Beach, so west of the eye of the storm, but still with tropical storm force winds. Rick, how is it?
Yeah, it's been swirling. We've just seen some of the strongest gusts since we've been out here, Chef. The rain has nonstop been pounding us, but I want to show you a power pole, a utility pole that came down where we were standing. I don't even know if you can see it now because of the visibility being so limited, but this, Pete, can you zoom in on that pole? We were standing right underneath it. There's a transformer on it. It's at the corner of that building, and you might be able to see it just snapped in half, it looks like, from here, and came down in that area where we were going live from earlier. And you know, listen, we were looking up, we were nervous about stuff, and that's one of the reasons we moved where we did. But that's the kind of thing that kills people or injures people in these hurricanes, and that's why authorities are so interested in evacuating as many people as possible, because you know that's one pole. We don't know how many more have come down or will come down, and there are a lot of trees out here. Some of them have come down, and many more likely will come down. If the rain is pelting us up, and the wind is still very strong here. It's whipping us from multiple directions. It's I guess tough to see how bad the damages are, and we have no idea, no way of knowing. Well, no one will know until this gets past us. But based on what we've seen so far and the strength of these gusts, there's no doubt going to be a lot of cleaning up to do.
And certainly, Rick, the eye of the storm has not completely gotten to the north of you. So in another hour, the winds are going to come out of the west.
Well, you know, it's clear the worst isn't over. We're getting buffeted by it now. We have been for a while now, and it's really it's pretty difficult being out here. The rain is a soaking rain. It's coming in sideways, and the wind is swirling, and it's blowing really hard. And you know, we've seen a lot of roof tiles come off. We've seen pieces of building exterior being thrown into the street. I've seen metal signs flying around, and now we've got a utility pole that snapped in half, and Lord knows what else in this community.
And the eye of the storm is fully over land now and inland waterways, headed for Bayou George and Nixon and Youngstown and Broad Branch. Within the next 15 minutes, you'll be in the eye of the storm. Do not go outside. To the east of this, where they're getting enormous winds and heavy rain, you heard a storm surge more than 7 feet. Apalachicola, Phil Keating is there. Phil.
Oh, hey, Shep, the wind just blasted me in the face with some rain. You can still whipping here. Hang on. Coming in from the west and southwest right now, and it is blowing well. Down below, that's the garage of the hotel we're staying at, and every car that has been down there it would be under about half or 3/4 of the wheel completely submerged right now. Here is that Water Street shot again. And a few minutes ago, there was a very large propane tank just floating rather, all the way down here, and it's now parked under our garage. Now take a look over in the parking lot. This white car with the one headlight on and the windshield wipers going. There's nobody. Nobody's been in that car for probably 12 hours. In fact, I believe it's one of our Fox employees. We believe that's the water rising up underneath the car, messing with the computers of the car, and now suddenly everything's operational. But Water Street remains a little river. It is bad, dangerous to be out there. Shelter warning is in place. The shelter order is in place. Stay in shelter for this reason. But it is just howling still over here. But we're definitely getting the opposite side of the wind that we were getting this morning, where it was coming up from the south of the Gulf of Mexico and really pushing all this Gulf water in. And you take a look at the Apalachicola River, which feeds south into Apalachicola Bay, which is essentially the Gulf of Mexico. It's just coming upstream, pushing all that river water that needs to go from left to right out to the Gulf, pushing it all back north. This means there's going to be a lot of flash flooding. The unknown right at this point is how many feet it's going to be. Storm surge was projected here to be, this is a great view. Where the stop sign is and this wind and these waves, this is just pounding from the west to the east at this point. Hurricane Michael really justifying every person from the governor on down to FEMA. Everyone should have evacuated. A lot of people did not evacuate. All of this Big Bend area, all of the counties are in a mandatory evacuation area because it's a very low-lying area. And that's why it's very prone to flooding. And you're seeing it happen right now. Everybody in this town, and that includes us, can't get out. Everybody is stuck until a hurricane goes north, stops raining, emergency managers and sheriff's deputies can get out and about and see what the damage is, how many power lines are down. But most of the area, the power is out. Duke Energy's got a website. A lot of power out. We don't have power, but it's definitely not over here yet, Shep.
Phil Keating live for us in Apalachicola. That's east of the storm center. Let's go west of the storm center now, right along those beautiful Panama City beaches. Jeff Flock is there from the Business Network. The eye of the storm missed you by 18 miles. You're a lucky man.
I know, isn't it? I'll tell you, I can't imagine what it would have been like. And I heard you point out earlier, fortunately, over a non-populated area with the worst of it. And we're tremendously fortunate here because this, as you know, this is tremendously populated. And right now, we've experienced only Category 1 conditions here, Category 2 conditions maybe at the most at the height of it, and we're not at the height of it now. We're, I think, past the height of it. So, absolutely fortunate. Not that there isn't some damage, but nothing like it certainly could have been if this came in with and we're still yet to know, and I don't know if you know, Shep, still, whether we saw Category 4 conditions at landfall or not in that eye wall. I don't know if it did, if it had weakened some before it actually got to shore, but I know we didn't see those kind of conditions here, as you say, 18 miles away. That's fine. It was a good time, and we all hope to see the power of Mother Nature, but you could spare me a Cat 4, Jeff.
Yeah, you can spare us all a Cat 4. The one thing that is still to come there on PC Beach is a wind out of the west. You're going to get due west winds, which means you're going to get some water coming off the Gulf of Mexico onto that beach, and I don't know how the dunes will hold up. Jeff, can you hear us? Well, just kind of watch him. Here's what happens when...
You still hear me? We lost power.
Well, I can hear you.
Okay.
And we'll all hear you soon.
Well, now it's back. I don't know, left up the generator.
They've got the generator. That's it. And that's where you hide. You wonder, what does everyone do when they're not out in the blowing wind? Well, you hide under a parking garage. And that's what Jeff Flock and his team were doing.
Okay, radio, here's something for you.
So now he's doing a little, listen to what he's going to say for, all right, here we go. I want to tell you what's going to happen next. This storm is going to continue to head inland to the north and east. Georgia, a hurricane is on the way. Some areas in Georgia can expect hurricane force winds. If you're in the Tallahassee area, if you're in southwest Georgia, if you're in the Atlanta area or the Dothan area or the Auburn area or the Montgomery area, listen to your locals. They'll tell you exactly what to expect. Tornadoes are possible, extremely heavy winds, very high rains. This storm is not over. It's made landfall, but the eye of the storm is still well formed, and there's great danger yet to come. Our coverage continues on Fox News Channel, on satellite and cable, and on Fox News properties online and on radio. Right here, we're going to return you to your local programming on local Fox stations. I'm Shepard Smith, Fox News, New York.
All right, guys.
And continuing now on Fox News Channel,
Oh, he's
let's
still
get
there.
the latest from the Meteorology Center. Adam Klotz is in the Extreme Weather Center. Man, directly over Tyndall Air Force Base and then to an inland area that is not populated almost at all. You don't want it to hit anywhere, Adam, but if it's got to hit somewhere, pick the nice spot.
That you absolutely did, Shep. I know you and I both worked and lived along this portion of the Gulf Coast for several years, and it is hitting an area where maybe not the worst spot if you had to fall somewhere along this coastline. But notice something else. As this runs on shore, it's been such a defined eye wall. That has not changed as we've run on shore. So it continues to be very strong around this eye wall. Anywhere that it does bump into, still going to see those very strong winds continue. And this is going to stay a hurricane here for a little while. It's not one of those ones that hits and immediately just completely falls apart. This could be a hurricane all the way into the overnight hours. But there's where you made landfall, 155 mile an hour winds at 130, continuing to be very strong. As we're seeing wind gusts now stretching up into 85 miles an hour. We've seen gusts at Tyndall get up to 100 and close to anyways, 130 miles an hour. That obviously is enough to do major damage, possibly even take down some buildings by the time this is all said and done. These are our current radars, and these are local, so you can take you in and kind of get you an idea. There is still your center of circulation, but each one of these bands, very powerful as far as heavy rainfall and winds. Wind gusts in these bands can be up to 75, 80 miles an hour, and those are expanding away from the center of this storm. So it's a larger area than just initially where the center of the storm is. It's not as consistent once you get outside of this initial center, but there are bands of very strong winds, Destin even getting up to 55 miles an hour, which is well off to the west of this particular system. There's your center of motion there. It will continue to be a strong storm with some thunder, some lightning, and heavy rain with this. And continuing to push farther inland. Shep, I did want to leave you with this because I know you've been talking a lot here the last couple hours about people being prepared and people deciding to stay. This is just a very uncommon storm for this particular location. These are the Panhandle major hurricanes here in the last several years, and you see most of them coming a little farther off towards the west. It's very uncommon that you see a major storm like this, like we're seeing here with Hurricane Michael Category 4, making its way to the Panhandle and making its way so far east in the Panhandle. So folks in this area, even though it's Florida and you think about hurricanes, they actually don't deal with this all that often.
They really don't. 1995 Opal, which was really more of a Pensacola thing, but Adam, since then,
over here,
everything is along the mouth of the Mississippi. It hits South Mississippi, going back to Camille in 1964, all the way through Katrina, and since then, it's from New Orleans to past Christian and Gulfport and Biloxi. That's where they hit. They don't hit here, but now they have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You mentioned a lot of these tracks that we're talking about, and it's over towards Pensacola, it's towards Destin, or it's even farther off towards the west. We have this one track, and it's just this one. You see it making that turn, and now all of a sudden you do have a first real major storm running over towards Panama City Beach, over towards Apalachicola. So it's probably woken up a lot of people.
Adam, thanks. He talked about Destin, which is about 70, 80 miles west of this center of circulation. Destin was a small little fishing village probably 35, 40 years ago, and it's now a metropolis that includes South Walton County, a vacation destination. They call this area kind of the Redneck Riviera, which isn't really fair there, but people from Atlanta and Nashville and big cities all over the southeastern United States, that's where they go. Destin and South Walton County and all the rest. they're still getting 55-mile-an-hour gusts. The Destin East Pass Bridge is closed. Everything along East Destin, along Sandestin, all shut down. And when you get into South Walton County, Grayton Beach and Seagrove Beach and Seagrove Place and all of those gorgeous areas shut down, at least for now. And look how broad this rain bands are. This is Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and the Lee County, Collier County area rain, St. Petersburg rain, Gainesville rain, Tallahassee rain, Jacksonville rain, Columbus, Georgia, Atlanta about to get rain, Birmingham getting rain, all the way over to Pensacola and everything in between. Enormous amounts of rain. And here's the most striking thing to me. This eye is completely over land. Completely. And yet look at the eye wall and how still well-formed it is. Ken Graham's with us from the National Hurricane Center. How long does this eye wall maintain itself, Ken?
Yeah, that's one of the problems with this storm, because when you make landfall at 155 miles an hour, it's going to take a while to get those winds to come down. So as a result, we still expect to be a hurricane later on tonight as this system reaches the
I'm gonna leave it running.
line.
I have
And
not
even
eaten all
central
day. I'm gonna
portions of
fix me a
Georgia,
sandwich,
we could
but I
still
will
see a
leave it
hurricane,
running.
this evening before it weakens.
This thing is headed to the northeast, right? So Mariana, Chattahoochee, that's ahead. What about big cities like, let's say, Albany, Georgia? How much of a danger are they in?
Yeah, you know, we talk about that rainfall, so some of these areas could see, 3 to 5, even 6 inches of rain. So you take that rain, you start saturating the soil, and as you were mentioning, made a great point, Shep, that the rain band, the rain shield is so large, you're already starting to saturate that soil. So once the winds get up there, now we have a problem, because now you have a saturated soil, the winds are there, you start toppling the trees and the power lines. So these power outages could stretch for weeks right along the coast, but you're going to have power outages well into Georgia.
All right, Ken Graham from the National Hurricane Center. Appreciate it very much. I want to show you some new video that's just come into us here on the Fox News deck. John Zanitas over here with it. Where is this and what is this?
This is Panama City Beach about 2 hours ago.
So this is west of the center of the storm?
Yes, it is. So keep your eye on this house right here.
Right here.
Boom.
Oh, man. Well.
So apparently this is new construction. No one was inside. It was a chief meteorologist from our Fox affiliate in Louisville who was just there. He was recording this with his cell phone and just happened to catch it at the moment that it just all came crashing down.
This beach, people who've been there, this beach is deep. It's not one of those skinny beaches like we have up here in New York where you can't walk too far before you get to the water. Normally, this is just huge and crystal white sand. The beach is gone.
We can see, I mean, there's the pier right there. There's docks. There's pieces of wood just floating all around here. This stuff just gets torn apart and just gets, smashed against these buildings.
Yeah, we've shown you very few pictures. John Zanitas, thank you. We've shown you very few pictures from Panama City Beach itself, beach proper, because it's too dangerous for us to put our people out there. In addition, these areas where the storm has just come over land, we didn't have anybody in Lynn Haven or in Callaway or in Parker, so on the east side of Panama City. We'll have to wait to find out exactly what's happened there and exactly how serious. We have some more new video from Panama City proper or out on the beach. No response. Kate, I want to go to Kate for this. I didn't realize. Kate is up here with new video. Is this from the city or from the beach?
So this is from Panama City Beach.
Okay.
This is one of our own Fox operators. Lance Craig, he's down there. He shot this on his iPhone.
Can we track the gnats on this, please? Go ahead.
This was as the storm was coming ashore, and you can just see how strong the winds are.
And it's interesting to watch because this is Panama City Beach. So the wind is not coming from the water. The wind is coming from the land going toward the water. So this is pushing the water out. The inland, the wind coming off the inland headed toward the beach. It's extraordinary. This is from his iPhone video, Panama City Beach.
Right. Exactly. And you can see they have some supplies lined up over here ready to go, but the wind is just insane.
That's right next to a Stuckey's, it looks like. So it must be right off an overpass or something. Panama City Beach, thank you, Kate, appreciate it. Panama City Beach is really 3 sections. Originally, Panama City Beach had a front beach road. This is some live pictures from Panama City. Everything was right along Front Beach Road. They call it the Miracle Mile. And this long stretch, when I was a kid, it had Ferris wheels and a sort of fair there, a boardwalk, somewhat similar to Atlantic City's boardwalk, but not exactly. There were a lot of things to do, some Holiday Inn style, 2-story motels, where as a kid we'd go stay at the Casa Loma right there on the beach, and you load 20 kids in the VW vans and you drive 7 hours to Panama City Beach, and it was the greatest week of life. Every year you couldn't wait. You fight the whole way down there, everyone screaming at each other, parents are furious, and finally you get there and everybody gets sunburned and we all cry. But Panama City Beach was the pièce de résistance for lower middle class people who lived in the southeastern United States. There is no one who would disagree. That's where you wanted to go as a little kid of not enormous means to have a fantastic time. That was Front Beach Road in the Miracle Mile, but it grew so fast in the 1970s and 80s, and eventually Middle Beach Road became something, and people moved in there. Then they had to put a bypass around it to connect Destin with areas to the east, and that meant Back Beach Road. And then it all just became one sort of sprawling metropolis, and then large buildings began popping up all along the beach. Many zoning concerns, and the case was always made, we don't have enough highways to evacuate from this area. There is no freeway, there's no interstate, there's no easy way out of Bay County, Florida. But it kept growing and growing. And then other areas around it became more of an upper middle class, to high, to very expensive sort of areas. And you have a little bit of everything in the Bay County and Panama City area. There's something for every kind of person and with every kind of different cash flow. If you don't have too much to spend or you have a lot to spend, you can go there and have a hell of a time. And there were real concerns this time yesterday that Panama City Beach was about to be wiped off the face of the earth. And I will tell you this, if this storm, the strongest storm to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle since the 1850s, had this storm not jogged to the right, but jogged to the left, Panama City Beach would be reduced to ruins. Instead, it is not. It's going to have a very bad storm. But the great news is the high season has just ended. Labor Day is about the end of things there in the Northwest Florida. There's still people who are owners who come down in late in September and into parts of October. But let's face it, people move on to college football by now, and the beaches begin to return to normal. People at Fort Walton Beach and Choctaw High have gone back to school. They're all closed right now. But all across Bay County, Escambia, Walton, Okaloosa, all of those areas that were so concerned, you have been spared the worst of it all. And instead, the storm has moved to the right. It's gone to the eastern side of Panama City proper. We don't really know what Lynn Haven is going to look like when this storm passes. We don't know what the eastern side of Panama City is going to look like. We certainly don't know what Tyndall Air Force Base is going to look like, and to the north in Bluntstown and the rest. But we know that the heavy population centers, the heart of tourism for Bay County, has been spared. We are waiting to find out if the oyster beds in Apalachicola, the engine for the economy in all of the Big Bend of Florida, if those oyster beds are salvageable, at least over the next couple of years. Because if they are not salvageable, there's going to be an enormous economic hardship on the good people of Florida, because that is the center of the money world. The storm is still headed inland. It's headed right for Georgia, and our coverage is just beginning. This is Fox News Channel. We'll be right back.
All right, guys, we're gonna mute the commercial. Thank you all for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. This is not a big channel. I don't have thousands of people subscribed. On this channel, I do the weather. I do hurricanes, tropical storms. I do tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes. That's what I do on this channel. I appreciate you coming in and watching. I really do. You guys are awesome. I'm sorry I'm not talking much, but you need to listen to the weather. People in Georgia need to head for cover. I'll turn it up as soon as the commercials are over, guys. I've been running this one here now for 2 hours and 30 minutes. I'm going to continue to run it until they decide they don't want to cover it anymore. And then I'm going to shut it down. Let the phone cool off a little bit. Then put it up on the Weather Channel and track the storm going into Georgia at that point. You got to admit, they haven't been doing that many commercials on here. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. What I need you guys to do is share it with people now in the Georgia area, South Carolina, North Carolina, because now they're in danger as well as Florida. I think this is still a commercial. I wasn't paying attention. Let me see.
Pick stuff up and move it around. So I'm just very, very grateful that I gave the product a try.
The 3-week quick start is...
Nope. Sorry. Wasn't paying attention. I apologize. All right, here we go.
Half past the hour, a live look. On the left side of your screen is Destin, Florida. On the right side of your screen is Panama City Beach. This Destin drive-along is coming to us from our good friends at Fox 10 WALA, which is a Mobile, Pensacola station. And Destin is really the extreme eastern end of their market. So you can see they're driving through the streets of Destin. Hard to make out too much. You can see the signs on the right hand blowing in the wind, and there's a lot of rain. The last place anybody should be now is out on the water. But you can see the high rises that are sort of a staple of the Destin area. And those high rises should have sustained this pretty well, because the storm itself went so far to the east of Destin. And Destin and Fort Walton Beach should be thanking their lucky stars today that this storm moved to the east of them, and really saying a prayer for the folks in the east side of Bay County, east of Panama City, Tyndall Air Force Base area. You can see the lights are flashing up above. This is clearly a construction zone of sorts, which is a pretty common thing in Destin. It's a very fast-growing, once the world's luckiest fishing village. Still has the largest tarpon fishing tournament in that part of the world that I know about, and it brings people out by the thousands every year in the summertime. High season is over there, so you're down mostly to locals, though there is still some tourism. But all the tourists were asked to get out a couple of days ago. And you can see there is some flooding in the streets. We're told that winds reach 50, 60, 70 miles an hour in this area. And when you consider that it's a good 70, 80 miles west of the center of circulation, that's some pretty extreme stuff to be so far from the center of the storm itself. Again, this is a drive along from Fox 10 WALA. This is in, we've been saying Destin. I'm now told they're in Miramar Beach, which is not very far apart. Is that right? They're now in Miramar Beach in the control room? Anybody? Is anybody still in our control room, I wonder? I guess not. So yeah, so this is Miramar Beach, and you can see it's some rain, some flooding, and we've got a new thought now about where to go. Mark Heiner in our control room was trying to tell me that we had another option at this point. Adam Klotz in the Extreme Weather Center. Adam, it looks like the next part of this storm is headed toward Mariana and Cypress and Chipley, Florida, before moving into what appears to be first strike, probably Donaldsonville, Georgia, and Chattahoochee, with enormous rain bands still around the center of circulation.
Shep, you're absolutely right. And part of the thing that makes this so interesting is the storm is still so strong at this point. You typically see an eye wall begin to collapse when you see a storm hit land. know inland communities an hour off the coast of Florida, an hour north as far as driving goes, and then into portions of southern Alabama, portions of southern Georgia, and we still have this very defined eye wall, and we still also, as a result, are talking about just these very strong winds, these rain bands. It does seem like this storm is staying incredibly compact so far, but that's going to happen when you have something that hits the land with such power, such low millibars. We talked about 919, I believe. So it's one of the lowest we've seen.
It is. We've gone from Destin eastbound now. This is Miramar Beach. And if you keep traveling, you get to Sandestin Beach Resort, which anybody in the southeast knows about. Sandestin and Topsail, huge vacation destinations, especially for families, right along the Gulf Coast between Destin and between Destin and Panama City, just east of Destin itself. And as you can see, the trees are not down. In some areas here, again, this is well away from the center of the storm. Look at this and go, oh, this was nothing. This is not near the storm. This is far west of the storm. Of course, they were concerned a couple of days ago. Who knows? We remember the cone of uncertainty. They didn't know if it was going to go somewhere between Pensacola and Apalachicola. They just didn't know. At the end, hurricanes make their own decisions. There were no upper level steering currents. There was no wind shear to kind of knock this thing apart. The water was extremely warm, north of 85 degrees, which is hot even for the Gulf of Mexico here in the middle of October. And the water is so shallow along that area. So the shallower the water, the more it heats up, the more energy that you can get from it. So they were concerned this storm might get even stronger as it heads towards the beach, especially if it heads toward the eastern part, toward Bay County, and over toward the area where it actually did hit. So sure enough, this came ashore at a historic 155 miles an hour, strongest storm to hit the United States of America since 1969. I was 5 years old in 1969. Hurricane Camille had hit the South Mississippi coast. And back then, people really didn't have the kind of forewarning that we have now. Camille hit that coast and wiped from the face of the earth everything in South Mississippi. It was gone. Foundations of buildings were lifted and removed, and they were down to nothing but sand. And for the next 30 years, everyone on the Gulf of Mexico compared every single storm to Camille. Your setback lines from the beach, how high you had to build your houses, how far above sea level your houses had to be on stilts. The ruler, the one that decided, was Hurricane Camille, which hit South Mississippi back when Fluff was a kitten, and she has her AARP card now. And then all of a sudden, Hurricane Katrina comes in and makes Hurricane Camille's surge, her storm surge, look like kindergarten action. When Hurricane Katrina came ashore in South Mississippi, right along the Louisiana line, and by the way, Katrina did not hit New Orleans. Katrina hit Pass Christian. That's where it came ashore. It was a Mississippi storm, and it removed from the face of the earth the western part of the Mississippi Gulf Coast and had a storm surge of 32 feet, meaning a 3-story building would have been 100% completely covered by the water. And everything along the shore, a mile into the railroad tracks, was a pile of rubble like nothing you have seen in all of your born days. If you saw it on TV, you don't get it, because it went on for so many miles. So many lives forever destroyed, an entire coastline rearranged. Well, this has come ashore as a much stronger storm than Katrina, much stronger. When Katrina finally made landfall, it was barely a Category 2, because at the very end, as they always seem to do, it lost strength as it made that jog. It was about to hit New Orleans, but everybody knew better. It was going to make a turn to the right and hit Mississippi, because they always do, and it did. And it lost strength, but it didn't lose that huge mound of water that it was pushing. This storm is different. 15 miles an hour forward progress for 3 days. When it hit the warmer water, it got bigger and stronger. Yesterday, early morning, it did an eye wall replacement cycle and got itself together, got as strong as it could get, began to wrap tighter and tighter. The central pressure began to dip. We got to 125 millibars and then 122 millibars. Finally, 922 millibars, finally down to 919 millibars, the third lowest pressure ever recorded in America. And what for a miracle, it hit one of the least populated areas of the entire coast of Florida. In Florida, they like to talk about from coast to coast to coast, meaning the Florida Panhandle coast, the Gulf Coast of the peninsula, and the entire east coast of Florida. If you were to take your finger and go all up and down that coast, all the way around, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of beach, where is the place where if an eye of the storm came ashore, it would affect the fewest people? You're horrified for, sad for, and praying for the ones it actually hit. But where's the lowest density? Right there, right where it hit. This hurricane will forever be remembered as the strongest storm ever to hit almost nothing, except for Tyndall Air Force Base and the east side of Panama City. When the rain's clear and the blue skies come out, as they always do after hurricanes, we'll be able to see what happened in eastern Bay County. And we can hope it isn't too bad. But of all the places to hit, it picked a damn good spot. Emily Ikeda is a multimedia reporter for Fox News, meaning she works across all of our platforms, digital, radio, social, everywhere. A young one who's probably experiencing her first bad storm ever. Is it, Emily? And how are things in Apalachicola?
Well, I did just come from covering Florence, but I will say Michael is giving Florence a run for its money. We're just watching the water continue to rise and rise here in Apalachicola. I've actually, for the past couple of hours, been watching my car slowly, the water rise up across my crew vehicle. We tried to find the highest point, one of the parking lots within our house here from the third floor, the balcony. I can no longer see any roadway from where I'm standing. So there's a lot of water here, Seth.
Well, there must be. I want to listen to WALA Fox 10. Their meteorologists giving it a live look. And the drive along happening in Miramar Beach. Are we saying no audio from them? No audio coming from that right now. The tech people are working on it. We'll get there. Let's go back to Emily. Have the winds subsided? Have you noticed any changes in the last 30 minutes?
We're still seeing you can actually physically see these massive wind gusts, and they continue to come through here. Maybe slightly, we saw them subside slightly over the past 30 minutes, but not very significantly, Jeff.
He's far, far east. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't mean to. Speaking to the control room. Lots going on back here. Where you are in Apalachicola is well south and east of where the center of circulation is now. If you go even farther east to the Big Bend of Florida, that's where our Griff Jenkins is right now. He is 100 storming. How is it there? Well, Griff is frozen. Griff is frozen like a fish down in the bottom of the freezer, because we just can't get the digital signals to come up. There was a time when we worked off analog, and you could sort of find a hole in the clouds and get something fuzzy to you. But with these digital signals, it's either all or nothing. And right now, for most of our correspondents up and down the coast, we're getting absolutely nothing. Take a look at this radar, and I'll show you what's happening now. This is the main ground-based radar based in Panama City that gives with a cross of different radars across this part of the country. We're real lucky to have this. And you can see from the Clearwater, St. Petersburg area, all the way up the peninsula of Florida on the Gulf Coast side, all the way, almost all of eastern Alabama is raining. From Birmingham, a line straight down, all the way east, from Birmingham, Alabama, all the way into western Georgia, there is solid rain across city after city after city. And I'm going to zoom in, and you can see where this thing is headed. The eye wall is still pretty well formed. You can see that it's getting some stress on the lower right-hand quadrant. It's not exactly a full circle. Griff Jenkins is about 100 miles south and east of here, Alligator Point. We got your signal up and working, I'm told. How are things there now?
Hey, Shep, the storm surge flooding is getting bad. You see a hurricane evacuation sign over my shoulder. We're in Crawfordsville, just north about 25 miles of Alligator Point because the situation there has become catastrophic. The flooding, I've covered a lot of hurricanes, Chuck, and it is flooding that I was very, very lucky to just get out with our team. We drove through water that was 3 or 4 feet up to our tires. As they say in cars, if the water gets up to the air breather, meaning the intake of the air in the engine, you're done. And you just saw some Wakulla County sheriffs racing up and down this dry part of the road behind me because you've got situation of people getting stuck in that water in a little Panacea. Now, Panacea, if you fly straight south from Tallahassee down to Alligator Point, which is considered Tallahassee's closest beach area, Panacea is right in the middle, and it's the lowest lying level part, and much of it is underwater right now, and it's only going to get worse. As you know, we're on the dirty side, and it's going to take a little time for the full impact. Having the eye just made landfall recently for the full storm surge to come, and you've got a couple of small bays in this marshy area. Much of this is the Apalachicola State Forest, the Bald Head State Forest, and several others that have these little water reservoirs, and they are starting to rise like crazy. And it made the one road, which is that Road 98 that went all the way to Pensacola and turned north towards Tallahassee, impassable. We've tried to navigate on back roads, several trees with live power lines that were down. We're on a road now, 319, heading north just above Crawfordville, and we're hoping really to hopefully get our crew out in Tallahassee. I'm talking to you on my iPhone because our other equipment has taken a beating. When I was down on Alligator Point trying to get to you, it became too treacherous, but there is a situation now. As I mentioned, Wakulla County Sheriff's, I was talking to Lieutenant Chris Savory, who's a PIO, graduated from the FBI Academy back here, where he was trying to take care of his people, and he says he's never seen anything like it. He was trying to talk me on back roads to get out about 20 minutes ago in what was one of the closest calls to getting stuck. And had I gotten stuck, I would be in the situation, Chef, that some of the people that stay behind in that town of Panacea, which is without a place to go. There's just no roads through State Forest to get out. And when the one road in and one road out, which runs north and south, that's Highway 98, it's just a bad, bad situation. Yeah. And as you can see behind me, you can see dry road. You can see far in the distance maybe a green light. There's even just a little tower in this area, which certainly, because we've got the Wakulla County Sheriffs and the first responders in this area, at least trying to work their way in. But I will say that Lieutenant Savory said, Griff, we're getting near a point where you're going to have a situation where you're going to have to shelter the best you can in the elements if I can't get to you. Fortunately, we were able to drive out. The situation's getting worse, Jeff.
Yeah, 25 miles north of there. I'm going to show our viewers where you are and give an idea of why this is such a treacherous position. Here's the state. I'm going to zoom into this area where it's all happening. Turn the drawer on here. Here's where the storm is. Make sure I get this right. The storm, draw red. The storm is about right here. Of course, it won't do it. I love the technology. It just won't. So anyway, here's what happened. This is Panama City. So you see this cup right here, this counterclockwise circulation. All that water pushing into here. This is Port St. Joe, where we talked to the mayor a little while ago, just getting inundated with flooding. Here's where he was, right over here. This is Alligator Point, and see how it has another one of those bends? All of that water coming up in this direction, just flooding all of this, the St. Mark's National Wildlife Reserve. And here's that little town of Panacea that he talked about. So Highway 98 is a beach road, and then here, when you get to Bald Point State Park and Alligator Point, it heads of Tallahassee. If you're in Tallahassee and you want to go to the beach, the closest place to go is right here. Highway 98, and then you get on Highway 319. All of this is flooded because this counterclockwise circulation is inundating all of this. For this area, this is going to be a big rainstorm, and same for up here. For this area right here, just to the east of Panama City, this is where the worst of the winds are. This area right here. We've not seen this area yet.
Doesn't mind me being on for 3 hours.
We'll know later how bad it is. But for the rest of you, the rain is on the way. Let's talk to Jeff Rogers now, communications manager for Gulf Power in Pensacola, Florida. Gulf Power is one of those big power companies that services much of the Gulf Coast region.
I'm gonna leave it running. I'll be right back.
If you're living in Okaloosa County and you're wondering what's happened, you go to that Gulf Power a website, and I understand you got about 100,000 without power right now.
That's right, about 116,000, believe it or not. But we've got all hands on deck here, more than 4,000 on the ground getting ready to go and restore power once this big monster moves through.
Yeah, I've got your website up, and looking all the way across, I'm looking at Tyndall Air Force Base, which is where the storm came ashore, and it looks like the vast majority of the area where the eye crossed, all of that is out of power.
There is. It's going to be widespread outages. We're counseling with our customers right now that it could be weeks before power is restored, and it actually will be a rebuilding process as we're restoring power because of the devastating effects of the storm.
And when you say rebuilding, you mean you got to put the poles up again. You got to put in new power lines, build from the dirt up.
Exactly. We're talking about new poles, new infrastructure, new lines. Not everywhere, but in the hardest hit areas specifically. And again, we're looking at weeks. This is not something that will be overnight. This is a devastating storm.
A devastating storm, but when you look across the area, its population density is not very high. Our viewers can see these numbers on this map. This is the number of places without power within the area where the storm actually came ashore. Tyndall Air Force Base is its own thing. It handles its own stuff. But around it, 50 plus, you can see these numbers. The population density just isn't very high. I mean, if you had to pick a place on the coast where a devastating storm would hit, this might not be the worst, right?
It's not bad. We were hoping it would be a little farther east, but you're right. It's not bad.
How long?
Except for the folks that are going to.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, except for the folks that will be without power for a while.
Yeah, I wonder if you have a rebuild thing that's coming in Eastern Bay County and all the way up into these affected areas, about past Weewahitchka and up to Fountain, that area there, could they be weeks without power?
They could be weeks without power. Yeah, that's not an exaggeration at all. This will take a lot of rebuilding effort here.
Well, and you got plenty of help coming from other places?
We've got crews from we've got crews from Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and all points in between, kind of descending on northern Florida. They're actually queued up and ready to roll as soon as this thing moves through.
Jeff Rogers from Gulf Power, based over in Pensacola Beach. Glad it missed you guys. Unfortunately, to the east of there in Appalachia, those oyster bays are in peril, and so is an entire economy. Phil Keating in Apalachicola, right in the middle of it all. Phil, how's it looking?
Well, it is still flooded. The wind's coming. It's the backside of Hurricane Mike, so it's coming from west to east here. You can really notice that down there in between these storage buildings with the hot tin roofs. Bad day for those. Look at it. Trashed, ripped apart, flailing. We're just hoping they don't start flying off and causing even further
Sorry,
damage.
I had to adjust it. I bumped it.
This is not a safe place to be yet by any stretch. This is Water Street, and lining Water Street on the sidewalks aren't made out of white concrete. Made out of those oyster shells. It's kind of cute and clever, but you were talking about what a juggernaut that industry is down here, this Apalachicola Bay. Absolutely, that is the truth. You can also see how dramatically the river, the Apalachicola River, no longer really being surged by the really strong hurricane winds and storm surge from the Gulf of Mexico up north. It's all kind of flattened out now. Significantly from much of the day. In fact, I would say the winds and the rains right now are some of the lightest, and if you're a human standing in it, some of the best they've been in several hours. But we're still getting some serious tropical storm gusts at least. But I certainly wouldn't rate these as hurricane strength at this point anymore. But it's the backside of the hurricane, and it's supposed to go down. Gradually go down for the rest of the afternoon as the center of the storm keeps on marching northeast. The streets are flooded. Power is out all across Apalachicola and across the bay, East Bay, over to East Isle, or East Point is the name of the town. I beg my pardon. Duke Energy and Gulf Energy control a lot of the utilities and the power grid up here in these parts of Florida and definitely a lot of power lines down, a lot of people without electricity right now, no TVs. Hopefully they have some battery-powered radios just to keep apprised of their county sheriff's department and emergency leaders. But right now it is a stay inside your house absolute order, because it is still way too dangerous to even venture outside. In fact, the local authorities in every single county do not want anybody leaving their house until the hurricane's gone, the rain has stopped, and the roads are determined to be safe for travel. Most likely, based on previous experiences, there will be a lot of roads with fallen pine trees blocking access, making driving a whole lot of U-turns trying to get around, as well as live wires possibly down there in the water, making that even more dangerous just to be walking in or standing in. The bridge that connects East Point with Apalachicola, very long, low-lying bridge, completely closed. So everybody in Apalachicola cannot leave until the water goes down. That's the deal.
Yep. Phil Keating live in Appalachia for us. Want to give you an update on Tallahassee, the state capital. Probably 180,000 or so people there, maybe 230,000 in Leon County. They've been having 55-mile-an-hour sustained winds, widespread power outages, though not every home, which normally, and not every business, which normally means that the winds are knocking over power poles, and in some places there's power, and in some places there's not. Tallahassee proper with about 1,500 outages, but Talquin Electric, which covers Gadsden, Liberty, Leon, and Wakulla counties, about 30,000 customers without power there, and it is raining to beat the band in Tallahassee. There had been concerns that this storm would get closer to Tallahassee and that there might be hurricane force winds there. It looks like instead it's heading north and east, and Bluffstown, generally speaking, is in the general direction of the eye of the storm as it continues to make its way north. Now, that it has crossed land and the coastal areas are beginning to get a little bit of relief is nothing to be put aside for people who are inland. People inland and to the north, Georgia and the Carolina coast. This storm is headed your way with very heavy rains, very high winds, the chance of tornadoes, certainly the chance of widespread localized flooding, and lots of rain ahead.
That's Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina,
ever to hit America,
and
the strongest
Beach area.
storm to hit the coast, this coast, since the 1850s. While all of this has been happening, an extraordinary thing is taking place on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is off more than 2%, off 535 points. The NASDAQ off more than 200 points. And the reason? Treasury yields. Stocks slumped today as Treasury yields continue to rise. Yields on a 10-year Treasury note climbed to 3.21%.
I've been at this now for over 28 hours.
To 3.38%. That puts downward pressure on stocks. So if your money is in stocks, you're taking a
28 hours
today.
is a long time.
Continuing coverage of the storm.
I will come back in about an hour. I definitely just need to take a break, okay? Let's see what they're saying here. Hang on a second.
Flash flood watches that are in effect here all the way up, even into the southeastern part.
Virginia Beach areas in flash flood. That's
we're looking
me.
at the highest amounts here into southwestern Georgia and the western panhandle of Florida along the I-10, 8 to 12 inches of heavy rainfall, a lot of moisture being drawn into this system. And then as you head farther northward, that swath, the projected path of this system is going to bring some heavy rainfall, 4 to 8 inches along 75 from Macon down through Douglas, and then on up towards Augusta. We can see some heavy rainfall with that. Plus, those damaging wind gusts of 80 to 100 miles per hour can extend even up through parts of central Georgia as we go through Thursday night.
All right, guys. I am going to call it quits for about an hour. I need to take a break. All right? I just need to. 28 hours being up, almost 30. God bless you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back up again, running again in an hour. All right? You guys have yourself an awesome afternoon, at least for the hour. I'll be off. And thank you so much for sticking with me. I will return. God bless. Be safe. Yes, I'm going to take a break, Paula. I really am.